Hey story enthusiasts! This is Fiction Domain bringing you another gem. In this video, we present to you What If Gringotts Audited Dumbledore when Harry turned 8 and froze all Order of the Phoenix funds. If you enjoy these stories as much as we enjoy sharing them, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Let's dive in. Chapter 1, The Ledger's Truth. Griphook's clawed finger traced down the column of numbers, his frown deepening with each entry. What had begun as a routine quarterly audit of magical orphans' trust vaults had quickly evolved into something that made the young goblin's stomach knot. The Potter account ledger showed a pattern that no self-respecting Gringotts employee could ignore. Senior Auditor Bloodfang, he called, his voice echoing against the marble walls of the review chamber. I found something. The older goblin approached with the perpetual scowl that had earned him his position. This better not be another case of wizard arithmetic errors, Junior Auditor Griphook. Griphook slid the massive ledger across the polished desk. Potter, Harry James. Orphaned October 31, 1981. Primary vault sealed until age of majority, trust vault accessible by magical guardian for approved expenses. His finger stabbed at the parchment. Monthly withdrawals of 50 galleons since November 1981. Bloodfang's eyes narrowed. To where? A Muggle exchange account. Converted to British pounds and transferred to. Griphook checked another document. Vernon and Petunia Dursley of number 4, Privet Drive. The boy's Muggle relatives. What's unusual about that? Expenses for his care are permitted. According to ministry records, the boy receives no medical care, attends public school in donated clothes, and is listed as living in a cupboard under the stairs. Griphook slid another parchment forward. Yet the magical guardian, one Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, has authorized these payments for premium childcare and housing accommodations. Bloodfang hissed, teeth baring involuntarily. Keep going. The Order of the Phoenix Vault, registered as a private defense organization, shows irregular transfers to Dumbledore's personal accounts. No receipts, no documentation. Griphook pulled another ledger. And here, the Potter properties in Godric's Hollow and Cornwall have been generating rental income, but not a Canute has entered the Potter Vault in 7 years. Who receives the gold? It's directed to an account called Fawkes Initiative. Signatory, Albus Dumbledore. Bloodfang slammed a gnarled fist on the table. Theft. Misappropriation. Breach of fiduciary duty. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. No wizard steals from Gringotts clients and walks away unmarked. Not even the great Albus Dumbledore. Protocol dictates ministry notification, Griphook said carefully. Notify Director Ragnarok first. Then freeze every account connected to Dumbledore or this order. Every single one. Bloodfang's eyes glittered. And prepare the evidence for the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. I want Amelia Bones herself on this case. Amelia Bones pushed her monocle more firmly against her eye as she reviewed the Gringotts documents for the third time. You're certain these figures are accurate? She asked the goblin delegation seated across from her. Madam Bones, Director Ragnarok said with barely contained fury, Gringotts has not made a mathematical error in 873 years. The accuracy is not in question. The criminality is. Amelia nodded curtly. She'd worked with the goblins long enough to know when to skip diplomatic niceties. Very well. I'll assign Aurors to investigate the boy's living conditions immediately. As for the financial discrepancies. She hesitated, knowing what it meant to challenge Albus Dumbledore. I'll need to consult with Minister Fudge. The minister has already been informed, Ragnarok replied coldly. He suggested we handle this, quietly. Did he now? Amelia's lips thinned. Well, the minister doesn't dictate DMLE investigations. Dumbledore may be chief warlock, but financial exploitation of an orphan is still a crime in magical Britain. She stood, straightening her robes. I'll lead the Privet Drive inspection myself. Today. And the accounts? Griphook asked. Remain frozen until our investigation concludes. If Dumbledore objects, he can take it up with me directly. She extended her hand to the goblins, a rare gesture of respect. Gringotts has done its duty. Now the ministry will do ours. Harry Potter huddled in his cupboard, nursing a bruised wrist. Uncle Vernon had been particularly angry about the burnt bacon this morning. The small space felt stuffier than usual in the July heat, but Harry knew better than to complain. He'd learned years ago that complaining only made things worse. He traced the crack in the ceiling, wondering what school would be like when he turned 8 next week. Probably the same, Dudley and his friends chasing him, teachers looking the other way, and coming home to more chores and less food than his cousin. The doorbell rang, causing Harry to jump. The Dursleys rarely had unexpected visitors. Boy! Stay quiet. Vernon hissed as he passed the cupboard, the lock clicking firmly into place. Harry pressed his eye to the small vent, watching as his uncle opened the door with a forced smile that vanished instantly. Vernon Dursley, asked a stern-looking woman in the oddest clothes Harry had ever seen, like a judge's robes from the telly, but deeper purple. What's this about? Vernon demanded, his face already reddening. Department of Magical Law Enforcement. I'm Amelia Bones. We need to discuss Harry Potter. Vernon's face cycled through red to purple to white so quickly that Harry worried he might collapse. There's no such thing as magic, he sputtered, attempting to close the door. A wooden stick appeared in the woman's hand, and suddenly the door wouldn't move. Mr. Dursley, obstructing a ministry investigation is a serious offense. Step aside. 2 men in similar robes appeared behind her, and Vernon stumbled backward. Where is the boy? Amelia asked, entering the house. Upstairs. His room, Petunia lied, appearing from the kitchen, wringing her bony hands. Amelia's eyes narrowed. Dawlish, Proudfoot, searched the house. One of the men pulled out a similar stick, muttered something, and his stick glowed blue, pointing directly at Harry's cupboard. Madam Bones, he called. Human detection spell indicates a child, there. Amelia approached the cupboard, her face tightening when she noticed the small vent and the lock. With a flick of her wand, the lock unlatched. Harry, she called gently. Harry Potter. Harry pressed himself against the far wall, heart hammering. How did they know his name? Was he in trouble? I'm not here to harm you, Amelia continued. My name is Amelia. I knew your parents. Harry froze. No one ever mentioned his parents. Whenever he asked, Aunt Petunia just said they died in a car crash because his father was drunk. Slowly, he crawled forward into the light. The woman's sharp intake of breath was audible. Harry knew what she saw, a too small, too thin boy in glasses mended with tape, dressed in clothes 4 sizes too big, with a lightning-shaped scar partially hidden under his unruly hair. Hello, he said cautiously. Merlin's beard, one of the men whispered. It's really him. Harry, Amelia said, recovering her composure. Do you know who I am? He shook his head. I'm a police officer of sorts. For people like you. People with magic. Vernon sputtered from across the room. Now see here, Silencio, the second man said, pointing his stick at Vernon, whose mouth continued moving but produced no sound. Harry's eyes widened. Magic is real? Yes, Amelia said simply. Your parents were a witch and wizard. And you are a wizard too, Harry. They weren't drunks, he asked quietly. Amelia's expression hardened. Your parents were heroes, Harry. Brave, talented, and loved by many. They died protecting you. She glanced at the Dursleys. You've been lied to about many things, I'm afraid. For the first time in his memory, Harry felt something uncoil inside him, something like hope. Would you like to leave this place, Harry? Amelia asked. To learn about your parents, about magic, about who you really are. Harry didn't hesitate. Yes. Pack your things. Harry gestured around the cupboard. This is everything. Amelia's jaw clenched. Dawlish, document everything. Proudfoot, contact Shacklebolt and have him meet us at the ministry. She extended her hand to Harry. Come with me, Mr. Potter. Your life is about to change. Albus Dumbledore was enjoying a particularly challenging game of wizard's chess with Minerva McGonagall when his office fireplace flared green. Headmaster. The panicked voice of Daedalus Diggle echoed around the circular room. Emergency. The ministry is at the Dursleys. The White Queen Dumbledore had been contemplating slipped from his fingers, shattering on the floor. Explain, he commanded, already on his feet. Amelia Bones, 2 Aurors. They've taken Harry. Something about a Gringotts audit. Dumbledore was already reaching for Fleur powder. Contact the Order members. Discretion is essential. He looked at Minerva. Alert Severus. I may need him. Albus, McGonagall said sharply. What have you done? The headmaster's eyes had lost their customary twinkle. What was necessary, Minerva? Always what was necessary. He stepped into the flames. Ministry of Magic. When he arrived, the atrium was unusually busy for a summer afternoon. Whispers followed him as he strode toward the security desk. Dumbledore. The Potter boy. Millions of galleons missing. The rumors had spread faster than he'd anticipated. Bad news always did. Chief Warlock, the security wizard stammered. Your wand, sir. I think not, Broderick. Dumbledore smiled kindly but continued walking. Ministry emergency involving my ward. No one tried to stop him as he made his way to the DMLE. His reputation still counted for something, at least. The scene in Amelia's office stopped him cold. Harry Potter, smaller than he remembered, dressed in rags, sat on a chair with a cup of hot chocolate, wide-eyed as Kingsley Shacklebolt conjured colorful birds from the tip of his wand. Harry, Dumbledore said softly. The boy looked up, confusion evident on his face. Sir. Do I know you? Not yet, Dumbledore replied, feeling a pang of regret. But I've known you since you were born. Headmaster. Amelia's voice cut like ice as she entered from a side door. You're just in time. We were about to contact the Wisengamot Administrative Office to schedule your hearing. Hearing. Misappropriation of funds from the Potter estate. Financial exploitation of a minor. Child endangerment through negligent placement. She ticked the charges off on her fingers. Unless the goblins decide to press additional charges for the order accounts. Amelia, Dumbledore lowered his voice, these are matters of great complexity. Harry's placement was essential for his protection. She nearly spat the word. We found him in a locked cupboard, Albus. With a broken wrist his relatives didn't bother to treat. Malnourished. Dressed in rags despite the 50 galleons monthly you approved from his trust vault. Dumbledore blanched. I was unaware of his specific living conditions. Arabella Figg reported, a squib observing from 2 streets away. That was your monitoring solution. She shook her head in disgust. And the money? Were you unaware of that too? The funds were directed to his relatives for his care, Dumbledore said carefully. Which they clearly never spent on him, Kingsley interjected, placing a protective hand on Harry's shoulder. The boy didn't even know his parents were magical. Harry watched this exchange with growing confusion. You sent money for me. And you knew they kept me in there. The hurt and betrayal in the child's voice cut deeper than any of Amelia's accusations. Dumbledore found himself at a rare loss for words. Harry, he finally said, everything I've done was to keep you safe. Safe? Harry's voice cracked. They hate me. The blood protection from your mother requires your residence with family. Your aunt's home is the only place you're truly protected from those who would harm you. Amelia snorted. Seems the only ones harming him were the guardians you selected, Albus. She turned to Harry. Mr. Potter, would you mind waiting outside with Auror Shacklebolt for a moment? I need to speak with Professor Dumbledore privately. Once the door closed, Amelia cast a silencing charm. The Wizengamot convenes tomorrow at 9 to review this case. Until then, every account you manage has been frozen by Gringotts. The order funds should have been properly documented, she interrupted. The war ended 7 years ago, Albus. What exactly was that money funding? Vigilance, he replied simply. Voldemort will return. Perhaps. But that doesn't entitle you to use the Potter fortune as your personal war chest. She leaned forward. Where is the boy going tonight? He can't return to those muggles. The blood wards are meaningless if he's being abused behind them. Amelia slammed her hand on the desk. I've arranged temporary emergency placement with the Weasleys. Arthur already agreed. Dumbledore stroked his beard thoughtfully. A good family. But they must understand the protection requirements. You're not in a position to make demands, Albus. The boy's custody is now a ministry matter. She softened slightly. Look, I don't believe you intended harm. But good intentions don't excuse what's happened here. The greater good sometimes requires difficult choices, Amelia. Save that for the Wizengamot, she replied. For now, consider what you'll say to that boy out there. He deserves answers more than any of us. The Burrow was nothing like Privet Drive. Where the Dursleys' home was sterile and uniform, this wizarding house looked like it might collapse at any moment, held together by what could only be magic. It's not much, Arthur Weasley said nervously as he guided Harry through the front door, but it's home. It's brilliant, Harry breathed, watching a clock with 9 hands, each bearing a family member's name, spinning to point at home as a wooden spoon stirred a pot by itself. A plump, kind-faced woman rushed forward. Harry, dear. I'm Molly Weasley. She seemed to stop herself from hugging him, instead gently patting his shoulder. You must be exhausted. Are you hungry? I've made shepherd's pie. Before Harry could answer, thundering footsteps announced the arrival of what seemed like a small army of red-headed children. Blimey, it's really him. Is that the Scar? Fred, George, Manners. I'm Fred, he's George. Actually, I'm Fred. Boys. Harry found himself surrounded by curious faces, tall, gangly twins, a boy about his age who shuffled awkwardly, a small girl who squeaked and hid behind her mother. Everyone, this is Harry, Arthur announced. He'll be staying with us for a while. He looked pointedly at his children. And we'll be treating him like family, not a museum exhibit. Sorry, the youngest boy mumbled, stepping forward with an outstretched hand. I'm Ron. Harry shook it, noting with surprise that Ron seemed as nervous as he was. Nice to meet you. Ginny, say hello, Molly urged the hiding girl, who peeked out briefly. Lo, she whispered before ducking back. Charlie and Bill are away, Arthur explained. Percy's upstairs studying, as usual. For what? He's only 12, one twin scoffed. Never too early to prepare for OWLS, the other mimicked in a pompous voice. That's enough, Molly said firmly. Harry, dear, you'll be sharing Ron's room, if that's all right. The Auror who brought your things said there wasn't much, but we've found some of Ron's clothes that might fit better than what you have. Harry glanced down at Dudley's enormous hand-me-downs and felt a flush of embarrassment. Thank you. That's really kind. It's nothing, dear. Now, everyone wash up for dinner. As the family scattered, Harry remained rooted to the spot, overwhelmed by the warmth and chaos. Ron noticed and hung back. Mental, isn't it? He said sympathetically. Having so many people around. Harry nodded. I've never. He stopped, unsure how to explain that he'd never sat at a dinner table with a family that wanted him there. Ron seemed to understand anyway. "Come on. I'll show you where to wash up. And after dinner, maybe we can play Exploding Snap. It's a wizard card game," he added, seeing Harry's confusion. "I'd like that," Harry said, realizing with surprise that he meant it. Later, after a dinner where he'd been gently encouraged to take seconds and thirds, Harry sat on the spare bed in Ron's violently orange Chudley Cannon's decorated room, watching a poster of flying people on broomsticks. "They're moving," he said in wonder. "Course they are," Ron replied through a mouthful of chocolate frog. "What would be the point otherwise?" He tossed a card to Harry. "Here, start your collection. I've got about 50 Dumbledores." Harry looked down at the card and was startled to see the same old man from the Ministry looking back at him, blue eyes twinkling behind half-moon spectacles. "Dumbledore," he murmured, turning the card over to read, "Albus Dumbledore, currently headmaster of Hogwarts, considered by many the greatest wizard of modern times. Dumbledore is particularly famous for his defeat of the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945, for the discovery of the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his work on alchemy with his partner, Nicholas Flamel. Professor Dumbledore enjoys chamber music and tenpin bowling." "Is he really the greatest wizard alive?" Harry asked. Ron shrugged. "Dad says so. Mum too. Only one you-know-who was afraid of, apparently." "You-know-who?" Ron lowered his voice. "The Dark Wizard. The one who, killed your parents and gave you that scar." Harry's hand unconsciously went to his forehead. "But he's gone now, right?" "Yeah. Because of you." Ron stared at him with a mixture of awe and curiosity. "You really don't remember any of it?" "Just a green light sometimes, in nightmares," Harry admitted. "The Dursleys told me it was a car crash." Ron looked horrified. "A car crash? Kill Lily and James Potter? That's mental." "Lily and James," Harry repeated softly. "I didn't even know their names until today." A silence fell between them, broken only when Ron awkwardly offered Harry another chocolate frog. "Thanks," Harry said, meaning it for more than just the candy. "For everything." Ron's ears turned pink. "'Snothing," he mumbled. "Anyway, wait till you see the garden gnomes tomorrow. Vicious little blighters." As Ron chattered about the wizarding world, Harry felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not quite happiness, the day had been too overwhelming for that, but something close to belonging. The emergency session of the Wizengamot buzzed with whispers as Albus Dumbledore took his seat, not in the Chief Warlock's chair, but in the witness box. Acting Chief Warlock Augusta Longbottom presided, her vulture-topped hat adding to her intimidating presence. "This special session will come to order," she announced, her voice cutting through the chatter. "We convene to address the matter of financial irregularities discovered by Gringotts Wizarding Bank concerning the Potter estate and the guardianship of Harry James Potter." Dumbledore sat calmly, though his usual twinkle was noticeably absent. "Presenting evidence for Gringotts, Senior Auditor Bloodfong and Junior Auditor Griphook," Augusta continued. "For the Ministry, Madame Amelia Bones, Head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement." The two goblins approached, carrying ledgers and scrolls. Griphook looked nervous, Bloodfong murderous. "Wizards of the Wizengamot," Bloodfong began without preamble. "Gringotts has identified 3 categories of financial misconduct by Albus Dumbledore. First, the misappropriation of funds from the Potter Trust Vault, ostensibly for the care of Harry Potter but clearly not used for that purpose." Murmurs swept the chamber. Second, the redirection of Potter property income to unauthorized accounts under Dumbledore's sole control. Third, improper documentation and personal use of funds from the Order of the Phoenix Vault, a registered charitable organization. Augusta nodded. "Please provide specific figures." Griphook stepped forward. "From November 1981 to present, 4,550 galleons transferred to Vernon and Petunia Dursley for Harry Potter's care. Our investigation with Muggle authorities confirms the Dursleys have no expenses related to the boy beyond minimal food. Their home mortgage is fully paid, they own 2 vehicles, and they take annual holidays abroad. And the property income? Augusta prompted. The Potter cottage in Godric's Hollow was declared a historical monument, but admission fees totaling 1,236 galleons annually were diverted to the Fox Initiative account. The Potter summer home in Cornwall has been rented continuously, generating 24,760 galleons over 7 years, none of which reached the Potter vaults. Louder whispers now. Several members of the Wisengamot were furiously taking notes. And the order accounts? Without proper documentation, we cannot determine legitimate versus illegitimate expenses. However, 62,897 galleons have moved from the order vault to Dumbledore's personal account since 1981, with no corresponding expense reports. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Augusta banged her gavel repeatedly. Silence. Madam Bones, your findings regarding the boy's living conditions. Amelia stood. The DMLE investigation confirmed that Harry Potter has been living in an abusive environment. He was housed in a cupboard under the stairs, denied adequate food, clothing, and medical care, and subjected to physical and emotional abuse by his relatives. She projected a magical image of Harry's cupboard onto the wall, causing several witches to gasp. Despite Albus Dumbledore's insistence that he placed monitoring charms around the property, there is no evidence these charms were ever checked or maintained. The only monitoring was through a squib neighbor who had limited access to the home's interior. Augusta's face had grown increasingly stony. Professor Dumbledore, you may now respond to these allegations. Dumbledore rose slowly, his purple robes unusually subdued. Honored members of the Wisengamot, he began, I must first express my deep regret for any suffering Harry Potter has endured. It was never my intention that he be mistreated. Yet you never checked, Amelia interjected. The blood protection provided by his mother's sacrifice required his placement with blood relatives, Dumbledore continued. This protection keeps him safe from Death Eaters and dark forces that would still seek to harm him. And the financial irregularities? Augusta pressed. The funds sent to the Dursleys were intended for Harry's care. I had no reason to believe they would neglect their duties while accepting the stipend. And the property income? The order funds? Dumbledore hesitated. The threat of Voldemort's return is ever present. The funds were directed toward maintaining vigilance, gathering intelligence, and preparing for the inevitable conflict to come. Without documentation. Without oversight. Augusta's voice was sharp. You speak of threats while acting as though the laws of Wizarding Britain don't apply to Albus Dumbledore. I acted in the interest of the greater good, a phrase, interrupted an elderly wizard near the front, often used to justify the most questionable actions. Augusta nodded. The Wisengamot will now deliberate. Cleared members only. The public galleries emptied reluctantly. Dumbledore remained seated, hands folded, as the remaining Wisengamot members conferred in hushed tones. When they returned, Augusta's expression was grimmer than ever. Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, she announced, this body finds significant evidence of financial impropriety and negligent guardianship. While we acknowledge your contributions to Wizarding Society, they do not place you above accountability. She unrolled a scroll. The Wisengamot rules as follows. First, you are removed as Harry Potter's magical guardian, effective immediately. Temporary guardianship is assigned to Arthur and Molly Weasley, with permanent arrangements to be determined within 6 months. Dumbledore's shoulders slumped slightly. Second, you are ordered to provide full accounting of all Potter assets and Order of the Phoenix expenditures to a Wisengamot-approved auditor within 30 days. Third, you are fined 10,000 galleons for breach of fiduciary duty, payable to the Potter estate. She fixed him with a hard stare. Finally, you are placed on probation as Chief Warlock and Hogwarts Headmaster for a period of 1 year. Any further evidence of misconduct will result in removal from both positions. The gavel fell with finality. This session is adjourned. Harry sat in the Weasleys' garden, watching gnomes scurry through the vegetable patch. The twins had shown him how to degnome earlier, spinning the potato-headed creatures until dizzy before tossing them over the hedge. He'd laughed more in 2 days than in 7 years with the Dursleys. Harry. Arthur Weasley approached, carrying 2 butterbeers. Mind if I join you? Harry shook his head, accepting the sweet, fizzy drink. The Wizengamot hearing finished, Arthur said gently. I thought you might have questions. Harry took a long sip before answering. Am I going back to the Dursleys? No, Arthur said firmly. Absolutely not. In fact, Molly and I have been named your temporary guardians. If that's all right with you. Harry's eyes widened. Really? I can stay here. As long as you like, Harry. Arthur smiled, his kind eyes crinkling. We'd be honored to have you. But what about the blood protection thing Dumbledore mentioned? Arthur sighed. The Wizengamot is consulting with Cursebreakers to see if similar protections can be established here. But Harry, protection from possible external threats doesn't justify definite internal harm. He placed a gentle hand on Harry's shoulder. You deserved better. Harry blinked rapidly, fighting back unexpected tears. What happens now? Well, practically speaking, Gringotts will assign you a new account manager to explain your inheritance when you're ready. The Wizengamot will evaluate permanent guardianship options, though we hope. Arthur paused. Well, we hope you might consider staying with us longer term. I'd like that, Harry said quickly. Arthur beamed. Excellent. And educationally, we thought you might benefit from some pre-Hogwarts tutoring. Nothing intensive, mind you, you're still a child and should enjoy it. But some basics of magic theory, wizarding culture, perhaps a bit of history. I can learn magic before Hogwarts? Harry asked eagerly. Theory, yes. Practical magic is still restricted until you have a wand at 11. Ministry regulations. Arthur winked. Though what happens accidentally around a house full of magical children, well, that's hardly something the Ministry can police, is it? Harry grinned, then sobered. And Professor Dumbledore? Is he in trouble? Arthur chose his words carefully. He's facing consequences for his actions, yes. But the wizarding world still needs Albus Dumbledore. He made serious mistakes regarding you, Harry, mistakes he'll have to answer for. But he's not an evil man. I don't understand why he did it, Harry admitted. Why leave me there? Why take the money? I believe he truly thought he was doing what was necessary to keep you safe, Arthur said slowly. Albus has fought dark forces for so long that sometimes he sees the big picture at the expense of individual suffering. It doesn't excuse what happened to you, but... He sighed. The world isn't divided into good people and Death Eaters, Harry. We all have light and dark within us. They sat in companionable silence, watching the garden gnomes cautiously emerge from hiding. Mr. Weasley? Harry finally asked. Arthur, please. Arthur. Would you tell me about my parents? What they were really like? Arthur smiled warmly. I'd be delighted to, Harry. And I know others who knew them even better, Remus Lupin, for one. We should invite him to visit. He settled back against the tree. Well, your father James was a brilliant troublemaker at school, rather like Fred and George, but with more talent on a broomstick. As Arthur spoke, painting vivid pictures of James and Lily Potter, Harry felt something healing inside him, a wound he hadn't known was there until now. For the first time, he could see himself as more than just an unwanted burden. He was Harry Potter, son of heroes, a wizard with a future that suddenly looked bright. Somewhere in Hogwarts, Albus Dumbledore was dealing with frozen accounts and political fallout. Somewhere in Britain, dark forces were stirring without the full order of the Phoenix Network to monitor them. But here, in this crooked, magical house, with a butterbeer in his hand and stories of his parents filling his heart, Harry Potter was exactly where he needed to be. Chapter 2, The Wizengamot's Judgment, Expelliarmus. Harry shouted, pointing a twig at Ron. Nothing happened, of course. Ron grinned and pointed his own stick back. Petrificus totalis. Harry dramatically froze mid-step, then collapsed onto the grassy hill behind the burrow, sending both boys into fits of laughter. Boys! Breakfast! Molly's voice carried across the yard. 3 weeks at the Weasleys had transformed Harry. His cheeks had filled out, his eyes sparkled with newfound confidence, and he'd even grown an inch according to the height chart Molly had started on the kitchen wall. The bruises from the Dursleys had faded, though the memories hadn't. Race you! Ron challenged, already sprinting toward the house. Harry tore after him, reveling in the simple joy of running without Dudley in pursuit. They burst into the kitchen, breathless, to find the usual morning chaos. Twins plotting in the corner. Percy reading the Daily Prophet with a disapproving frown. Ginny, still shy around Harry, quietly buttering toast. Ah, good, everyone's here, Arthur said, looking unusually serious. We've received word from the ministry about today's Wizengamot session. Harry's stomach clenched. While he'd been catching frogs and learning exploding snap, the wizarding world had continued dissecting the scandal of his mistreatment and Dumbledore's financial misconduct. Will I need to go? He asked, hating how small his voice sounded. No, Harry, Arthur reassured him. Amelia felt strongly that you shouldn't be subjected to that circus. But they'll be determining more permanent arrangements for your guardianship and the management of your estate. More permanent than staying here? Harry asked, panic edging his voice. Molly swooped in, serving him extra bacon. We've put in a formal application to be your long-term guardians, dear. But there are complications. Blood wards, Harry guessed, repeating the term he'd heard dozens of times now. Arthur nodded. And politics. Several prominent families have filed competing guardianship petitions. Like who? George asked through a mouthful of eggs. The Malfoys, for one, Arthur replied grimly. Fred choked on his pumpkin juice. The Malfoys? They were practically Death Eaters. Allegedly, Percy corrected primly. Father Malfoy was cleared of all charges. After greasing enough palms to lubricate all of Gringotts, Fred retorted. Boys, Molly warned. Not in front of Harry. But Harry leaned forward. No, please. I want to know what's happening. Who are the Malfoys? Arthur sighed. Lucius Malfoy is a wealthy, influential wizard from an old pureblood family. He claimed to be under the Imperius curse during Voldemort's reign. The entire Weasley family flinched at the name. But many suspect he was a willing supporter. He's now on the Hogwarts Board of Governors and has the minister's ear. And he wants, me? Harry asked incredulously. He wants control of the Potter fortune and the political capital of raising the boy who lived, Arthur corrected. It's not about you personally, Harry. It's about power. Harry pushed his plate away, appetite gone. I won't go to them. I want to stay here. Molly stroked his hair affectionately. And we want you here, dear. So what happens today? Ron asked. The Wizengamot will hear arguments from all petitioning parties, Arthur explained. They'll also review the full accounting of Harry's assets, which have finally been untangled from Dumbledore's personal accounts. Percy perked up. Will the headmaster be there? The prophet says he might be removed from his positions. That's highly unlikely, Arthur said. Despite everything, Dumbledore remains respected by many. The focus today is on Harry's future, not Dumbledore's punishment. Well, I'm going with you, Molly declared, standing. Someone needs to represent Harry's interests directly. And I'll stay with the children, Arthur agreed. Harry, try not to worry. The Wizengamot may be political, but most members genuinely want what's best for you. Harry nodded, but anxiety curled in his stomach. He'd only just found a place where he belonged. The thought of being ripped away again made his hands shake. Under the table, Ron nudged his foot reassuringly. "Wanna play Quidditch after breakfast?" he asked, clearly trying to distract him. "I bet Charlie's old broom would work for you." "Yeah," Harry managed, grateful for the normalcy Ron offered. "Thanks." The Wizengamot chambers buzzed with tension. Purple-robed witches and wizards filled the tiered seats, their conversations creating a dull roar until Augusta Longbottom rapped her gavel. "This session of the Wizengamot will come to order," she announced. "We continue our examination of the Potter guardianship and estate management." Albus Dumbledore sat not at the Chief Warlock's bench but in the audience section, his expression serene despite the whispers that followed him. Beside him sat Minerva McGonagall, whose pinched expression suggested she'd rather be anywhere else. "Today we will hear petitions for permanent guardianship," Augusta continued. "We will then review the complete audit of the Potter estate and determine appropriate management going forward." In the front row, Molly Weasley sat ramrod straight, her typically warm face set with determination. Across the aisle, Lucius Malfoy lounged with aristocratic indifference, though his eyes gleamed with calculation. "Our first petition comes from Arthur and Molly Weasley, currently serving as temporary guardians," Augusta announced. "Mrs. Weasley, please approach." Molly stood, smoothing her best robes nervously before walking to the center of the chamber. "Mrs. Weasley, please state your case for permanent guardianship of Harry Potter." Molly took a deep breath. "Honored Wizengamot, my husband and I offer Harry what he needs most, a loving home, stability, and a family that already cares deeply for him. In just 3 weeks, we've seen remarkable improvements in his health and spirits. He's bonded with our children, particularly our son Ron, who's his age." She squared her shoulders. "We don't seek control of his fortune. We don't care about his fame. We simply want to give him the childhood Lily and James would have wanted for their son, one filled with love, laughter, and proper shepherd's pie." A ripple of appreciative chuckles spread through the chamber. "And the matter of blood protection?" Augusta asked. "Bill, our eldest, works as a cursebreaker for Gringotts. He's consulting with his colleagues about alternative protective measures. Meanwhile, our home has been placed under the Fidelius charm with Alastair Moody as secret keeper." Augusta nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Weasley. We'll hear from Mr. Malfoy next." Lucius Malfoy approached with elegant confidence, his silver-tipped cane tapping rhythmically against the marble floor. "Distinguished members of the Wizengamot," he began silkily, "while I appreciate the rustic charms of the Weasley household, the boy who lived deserves better than cramped quarters and hand-me-down clothes." Molly's face flushed red. "My family offers Harry Potter a life befitting his status, private tutors, expansive grounds, and introduction to the highest echelons of wizarding society. Our son Draco is the same age and would welcome a brother. My wife Narcissa is related to the Blacks, connecting her distantly to the Potter lineage, satisfying the blood requirement." He paused for effect. "Most importantly, we have the resources to manage his substantial inheritance appropriately, unlike some who might be tempted by such wealth when struggling to feed their own numerous children." Several gasps echoed around the chamber. Molly half rose before Augusta's warning look stopped her. "Furthermore," Malfoy continued, "I have the political connections to shield the boy from those who would exploit his fame. The recent, unfortunate revelations about Albus Dumbledore's management demonstrate the dangers of entrusting the Potter heir to those with their own agendas." His cold eyes flicked to Dumbledore before returning to Augusta. "The Malfoys stand ready to give Harry Potter the privileged upbringing he deserves." "Thank you, Mr. Malfoy," Augusta said neutrally. "We have 3 additional petitions, from Andromeda and Ted Tonks, from Amelia Bones, and from Minerva McGonagall." This last name caused surprised murmurs. McGonagall sat straighter, avoiding Dumbledore's questioning glance. After hearing from all petitioners, Augusta called for a brief recess before the financial review. In the hallway outside, factions quickly formed, pure-blood elitists around Malfoy, Dumbledore loyalists in their own corner, and a mixed group surrounding Molly Weasley. Despicable insinuations, Minerva fumed, joining Molly. As if the Weasleys would touch a canute of Harry's money. "Thank you for standing with us, Minerva," Molly said gratefully. "Though I was surprised by your own petition." McGonagall's lips thinned. "Insurance, Molly. If the Wisingamot finds your family unsuitable, which they shouldn't, I wanted another option besides the Malfoys. I failed that boy once by not objecting strongly enough to his placement with those awful muggles. Never again." Across the hall, Dumbledore approached, causing conversations to falter. "Minerva, a word," he requested quietly. She hesitated before nodding curtly and following him to a private alcove. "You didn't inform me of your guardianship petition," he said mildly. "I wasn't aware I needed your permission, Headmaster," she replied frostily. Dumbledore sighed. "I thought we were aligned in our concern for Harry's welfare." "We are. That's precisely why I submitted my name." Her Scottish brogue thickened with emotion. "I told you those were the worst sort of muggles, Albus. I warned you. And then to learn you were sending them gold while Harry slept in a cupboard. The blood protection means nothing if the boy is being harmed behind it." She lowered her voice, aware of curious onlookers. "I've respected you for decades, Albus. Followed your lead through 2 wars. But this was inexcusable." Dumbledore looked genuinely pained. "I never intended, your intentions matter less than your actions," McGonagall interrupted. "Or in this case, your inaction. 7 years, Albus. You didn't check on him once." "I had monitoring charms, clearly insufficient ones." She squared her shoulders. "The Weasleys are the best option for Harry. If the Wisingamot disagrees, I've offered an alternative that keeps him away from Death Eater sympathizers. That's all." Dumbledore nodded slowly. "I see. And my role in Harry's life going forward? Will depend entirely on rebuilding the trust you've broken," McGonagall replied before turning sharply and walking away. Back in the chamber, Griphook stepped forward with several large ledgers. "Honored Wisingamot," the young goblin began, visibly more confident than at the previous hearing, "I present the complete audit of the Potter estate. The total assets are as follows: gold, 3.2 million galleons across family, trust, and investment vaults. Properties: the partially destroyed cottage in Godric's Hollow, a manor house in Devon currently under magical preservation, a summer home in Cornwall currently leased, and a London townhouse currently sealed. Business interests: minority stakes in Quality Quidditch Supplies, Flourish and Blots, and Sleekeasy's Hair Potion, founded by Fleamont Potter, Harry's grandfather. Combined, these generate approximately 50,000 galleons in annual dividends. Artifacts: various magical items of historical and monetary value, including James Potter's invisibility cloak, currently in Albus Dumbledore's possession." All eyes turned to Dumbledore, who nodded calmly. "I have it secured at Hogwarts. It will, of course, be returned to Harry when appropriate." "When appropriate?" Amelia Bones questioned sharply. "It's his property, not yours to determine when he should receive it. It's an exceptionally powerful magical artifact," Dumbledore explained. "I merely suggest that an 8-year-old might not be ready for its responsibility." Augusta intervened before the argument could escalate. "The cloak will be placed in his vault until his guardians deem him ready. Continue, Auditor Griphook." Griphook detailed the financial irregularities already covered in the previous hearing, then presented Gringotts' recommendations for estate management. Given the considerable assets involved, Gringotts recommends establishing a formal trust with multiple trustees to prevent future mismanagement. "We suggest 1 trustee from the Guardian family, 1 from the Ministry, 1 from Gringotts, and a 4th elected by this body." Augusta nodded. "A sensible approach. Are there objections?" Lucius Malfoy stood. "I propose myself as the Wisingamot representative, given my extensive financial experience." "I'm sure you'd find that convenient," Amelia Bones muttered, just loudly enough to be heard. Louder, she added, "I nominate Andromeda Tonks, a respected solicitor with estate management experience who has no personal stake in becoming Harry's guardian." The tension in the room thickened as the Wisengamot prepared to vote on both the guardianship and trust management. Augusta called for a closed session, clearing the public galleries despite protests from several prominent journalists, including a beetle-spectacled witch who seemed particularly aggrieved. While the wizarding world decided his fate, Harry soared above the Weasleys' orchard on Charlie's old broomstick, discovering a natural talent that left the Weasley children awestruck. Bloody hell, Fred marveled as Harry executed a perfect diving catch of the apple they'd been using as a makeshift quaffle. "You sure you've never flown before?" "Language," Percy scolded automatically from where he sat reading under a tree. "But seriously," George added, "you're a natural, Harry. Better than Charlie was at your age, and he was Gryffindor captain." Harry grinned, his earlier anxiety temporarily forgotten in the rush of flight. "It feels like I was born to do this. Like I already know how." "Your dad was an amazing Quidditch player," Ron said. "Chaser for Gryffindor. Won the cup twice as captain." Harry's smile widened. Every new fact about his parents felt like a precious gift, connections to a history he'd been denied. "Do another dive," Ginny called, surprising everyone. It was the most she'd spoken around Harry since his arrival. "Watch this." Harry called back, urging the broom higher before tilting into a steep descent that had the twins whooping with excitement. Just as he pulled out of the dive, a blue magical spark shot from his fingertips, startling him. The broom jerked wildly, sending Harry tumbling onto the grass. "Harry!" The Weasleys rushed over as he sat up, dazed but unhurt. "What was that?" Ron asked, wide-eyed. "Accidental magic," Percy explained, kneeling beside Harry. "Happens to young wizards when they're emotional, excited, scared, angry." "But that wasn't accidental," Harry said slowly. "Just before I fell, I wanted to go faster. I was thinking about it, and then, spark." The Weasley children exchanged significant looks. "That's different," Percy said carefully. "That sounds like wandless magic. Very rare, especially intentional wandless magic." "Is that bad?" Harry asked anxiously. "Bad? It's bloody brilliant," George exclaimed. "If you're doing that at 8, Fred began. "Imagine what you'll do at Hogwarts," George finished. Harry flexed his fingers, still feeling a strange tingling sensation. "Can you teach me how to control it?" Percy hesitated. "Technically, underage magic outside Hogwarts is prohibited, but accidental magic isn't punished. The line gets blurry with wandless magic. We should probably tell Dad." "Tell Dad what?" Arthur's voice came from behind them as he approached from the house, his expression unreadable. "Harry did wandless magic," Ron blurted excitedly. "On purpose." Arthur's eyebrows rose. "Did he indeed? Well, that's certainly interesting. But actually, I came to tell Harry that the Wisengamot has reached its decision." Molly just fire-called. Harry's stomach dropped. "And?" Arthur's serious expression melted into a broad smile. "You're officially a Weasley, Harry. Well, not in name, but in guardianship. The Wisengamot approved our petition." Relief crashed over Harry with such force that another spark shot from his fingers, this time setting a nearby dandelion floating upward like a tiny parachute. "See?" Ron pointed excitedly. He did it again. Arthur watched the floating dandelion with fascination. "Remarkable. We'll need to help you channel that safely, Harry. But first, how about some celebratory treacle tart? Molly's bringing one home." As they walked back to the house, the twins flanking Harry protectively, Arthur continued explaining the Wisengamot's decisions. "Your estate will be managed by a trust with 4 trustees, Molly for the family, Andromeda Tonks for the Wizengamot, Amelia Bones for the ministry, and Griphook for Gringotts. Who's Andromeda Tonks? Harry asked. A brilliant witch, related to the Blacks but married a Muggle-born. Disowned by her family, became a top magical solicitor. She has a daughter, Nymphadora, who's training to be an Auror. Arthur chuckled. Don't call her Nymphadora if you meet her, though. Goes by Tonks. And the blood protection thing? Arthur's expression sobered. Bill's working with some colleagues on modified wards. Until then, the Fidelius charm should keep you safe. Only people who know the secret can find the burrow now. What about Dumbledore? Harry asked hesitantly. Arthur sighed. He remains Hogwarts headmaster and chief warlock, though on probation for both. He's requested a meeting with you, actually. Said he has explanations and apologies to offer. Harry nodded slowly, unsure how he felt about seeing the old wizard again. Part of him was angry, but another part remembered the genuine regret in those blue eyes when they'd last met. Can you be there too? He asked. Of course, Arthur assured him. We won't leave you alone with him if you don't want that. They reached the kitchen door just as Molly arrived into the yard with a loud crack, carrying a large treacle tart and wearing a triumphant smile. We won, she announced unnecessarily, sweeping Harry into a bone-crushing hug. Those stuffy old wizards tried to argue, but I told them, I said, Harry Potter needs love, not politics. And Andromeda backed me beautifully, and even Augusta Longbottom said Harry deserved a proper family. What about Malfoy? Fred asked. Molly's expression turned smug. Lucius looked like he'd swallowed a dung bomb when the vote went against him. Stormed right out of the chamber, he did. And Dumbledore? Percy inquired. Gracious in defeat, Molly admitted. Publicly endorsed the decision and offered whatever assistance we might need. She set down the tart and began cutting generous slices. Now enough about politics, we're celebrating. As treacle tart was distributed, Harry found himself surrounded by redheads, all talking and laughing at once. The anxiety that had gripped him all day finally dissolved completely, replaced by a warm certainty that this was where he belonged. Severus Snape stalked through the dungeons of Malfoy Manor, his black robes billowing dramatically despite the absence of an audience to appreciate the effect. Lucius had summoned him urgently after the Wizengamot hearing, and Snape had little patience for the aristocrat's political tantrums. He found Lucius in his study, nursing a glass of expensive fire whiskey and scowling. You requested my presence, Snape stated flatly. Ah, Severus. Lucius gestured to an adjacent chair. Drink? I prefer clarity of mind. What's so urgent? Lucius swirled his amber liquid thoughtfully. The Potter boy. He's been placed with the Weasleys permanently. I fail to see how this concerns me, Snape replied coldly. The brat's living arrangements are of no interest until he infests Hogwarts in 3 years. 3 years during which he'll be indoctrinated by blood traders, Lucius countered. 3 years during which the considerable Potter fortune will remain beyond reach. 3 years during which Dumbledore will rebuild his relationship with the boy, despite this temporary setback. Snape arched an eyebrow. And our mutual friend would not be pleased. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Both men instinctively glanced at their left forearms, though neither rolled up their sleeves to examine what lay beneath. He's gone, Snape said quietly. Is he? Lucius leaned forward. You were closer to Dumbledore than any of us. You've heard his theories, his insistence that the Dark Lord will return. What if he's right? Snape's face remained impassive. If he returns, he'll find me exactly where I should be, positioned at Hogwarts, trusted by Dumbledore, ideally placed to serve. And he'll find me having allowed his greatest enemy to be raised by Muggle-loving fools, Lucius countered. The Potter boy should be controlled, monitored at minimum. What exactly are you suggesting, Lucius? Malfoy hesitated. Nothing overt. But perhaps we could ensure the boy receives proper guidance. A counterbalance to the Weasley influence. Through what means? I can hardly invite him for tea. No, but you could advise me on potions that might make him more amenable to our perspective when the time comes. Snape's expression hardened. I will not poison a child, Lucius, regardless of his parentage. If that's why you summoned me, our conversation is concluded. He stood to leave, but Lucius raised a placating hand. Nothing so crude, Severus. I merely suggest we keep our options open. Watch. Wait. The Weasleys are notoriously careless. Opportunities will present themselves. Snape studied his old ally. The Dark Lord is gone, Lucius. This obsession with the Potter boy serves no purpose except to risk your current standing. Perhaps. Lucius refilled his glass. Or perhaps I'm simply being prudent. If Dumbledore believes in preparing for the Dark Lord's return, shouldn't we? Snape offered no answer, merely inclining his head slightly before departing. As he swept through the opulent hallways of Malfoy Manor, his mind raced. He would need to inform Dumbledore of this conversation, evidence that the former Death Eaters were stirring, watching the Potter boy with renewed interest. The irony wasn't lost on him. After 7 years of relative peace, Harry Potter was once again becoming the focal point of Wizarding Britain's simmering tensions, all because some overzealous goblin had decided to audit Dumbledore's accounts. Albus Dumbledore sat in his office, surrounded by the whirring silver instruments that monitored various magical phenomena throughout Britain. One particular device, a delicate silver spinner with a pulsing red core, had stopped functioning 3 weeks ago when Harry Potter left Privet Drive. The blood wards had collapsed. Enter, he called at the knock on his door, though he already knew who it was. Minerva McGonagall stepped inside, her posture rigid with the lingering tension between them. The Weasleys have agreed to bring Harry to Hogwarts tomorrow, she reported. They've requested neutral ground, the Great Hall rather than your office. Dumbledore nodded. Understandable. Will you be joining us, Minerva? If Harry wishes it. Her tone softened slightly. He's flourishing with them, Albus. The reports from Bill Weasley suggest he's already showing remarkable magical aptitude. I'm not surprised, Dumbledore murmured. His parents were exceptionally gifted. Minerva studied him. What will you tell him? About why you left him there? About the money? Dumbledore sighed heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 100+ years. The truth, Minerva. As much of it as an 8-year-old can comprehend. Including the prophecy. The reason Voldemort targeted him specifically? No, Dumbledore said firmly. That burden can wait until he's older. But he deserves to understand why I believed the blood protection so essential enough to overlook. He trailed off, uncharacteristically lost for words. His suffering, Minerva finished bluntly. Yes. Dumbledore's blue eyes had lost their customary twinkle. A calculation I deeply regret. I prioritized his physical safety over his emotional well-being. A grave error in judgment. Minerva's expression softened further. You're not infallible, Albus, despite what some believe. But your intentions were good. The road to hell, Minerva, he replied quietly. Indeed. She turned to leave but paused at the door. The boy has questions about his parents. Particularly Lily's sacrifice, the magic that protected him that night. Be prepared. After she departed, Dumbledore rose and approached Fawkes's perch, stroking the phoenix's brilliant plumage. I've made a mess of things, old friend, he murmured. The careful plans of years, undone by a simple audit. Fawkes trilled softly, the sound somehow both comforting and gently chiding. Yes, perhaps it's for the best, Dumbledore conceded. The boy seems happier. Safer in some ways, though more vulnerable in others. He stroked his long beard thoughtfully. And yet, when Tom returns, and he will return. Harry must be ready. The prophecy demands it. The Phoenix gave him a penetrating look that Dumbledore had long ago learned to interpret. You're right, of course, he sighed. Perhaps this new path will prepare him better than my original plan. A boy raised with love might face darkness with greater strength than one raised in neglect. Fawkes trilled again, more approvingly this time. Very well. Tomorrow I will apologize, explain what I can, and begin rebuilding trust. Dumbledore returned to his desk, pulling a small package wrapped in simple brown paper from a drawer. And I will return what rightfully belongs to him. James would want his son to have it. Inside the package, the invisibility cloak shimmered with ancient magic, magic far more complex than even Albus Dumbledore fully understood. Harry couldn't sleep. Tomorrow's meeting with Dumbledore filled him with conflicting emotions, curiosity, anxiety, lingering resentment. He slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Ron, whose snores filled their shared bedroom. Barefoot, he padded to the window, gazing out at the star-filled sky above the burrow's crooked silhouette. In just 3 weeks, this place had become more home than Privet Drive had been in 7 years. A soft knock startled him. Harry? Molly whispered, easing the door open. I thought I heard movement. Can't sleep, dear. Harry shook his head. Thinking about tomorrow. Molly entered, carrying 2 steaming mugs. Hot chocolate. My mother's cure for midnight worries. They sat together on the edge of Ron's spare bed, sipping the sweet, creamy drink in companionable silence. Nervous about seeing Professor Dumbledore? Molly finally asked. Kind of, Harry admitted. Everyone talks about him like he's this great wizard, but he left me with people who hated me. He took my parents' money. I don't understand why. Molly sighed. Adults make mistakes, Harry. Sometimes terrible ones, even with good intentions. But how could he not know? About the cupboard and everything? I've asked myself the same question, Molly said honestly. I think Dumbledore has spent so long fighting dark wizards and making world-changing decisions that he sometimes misses the smaller, human details. He saw the big picture, keeping you safe from Death Eaters, but missed how the Dursleys were treating you day to day. That doesn't make it okay, Harry said, a spark of anger flaring. No, it doesn't, Molly agreed firmly. Nothing excuses what happened to you. But understanding why might help you decide how to feel about him going forward. Harry considered this, wrapping his hands around the warm mug. What would you do? If you were me? Molly smiled sadly. I'd listen to what he has to say. I'd decide for myself if his apology seems genuine. And then I'd remember that forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone, it's something you give when and if you're ready, for your own peace. I'm still angry, Harry confessed. But I also want to know more about my parents, about Voldemort, about why I'm famous for something I can't even remember. Then ask those questions tomorrow, Molly encouraged. You have that right. Just remember, Arthur and I will be right there with you. Harry nodded, feeling slightly better. Thanks, Mrs. Weasley. Molly, dear. I think we're well past Mrs. Weasley, don't you? She brushed his unruly hair affectionately. Now, finish your chocolate and try to sleep. Whatever happens tomorrow, you'll face it better with rest. After she left, Harry returned to the window, watching a garden gnome scurry across the moonlit yard. Tomorrow he would face Albus Dumbledore, the man who had shaped his fate from afar for 7 years. But unlike at Privet Drive, Harry wouldn't face him alone and powerless. He had the Weasleys now, and something more, the strange, tingling power that occasionally sparked from his fingertips when his emotions ran high. Experimentally, he concentrated on that feeling, focusing on a small paper bird Ron had folded earlier. Float, he commanded silently, remembering the sensation from the orchard. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, almost reluctantly, the paper bird twitched, rose an inch from the nightstand, and hovered unsteadily. Harry grinned into the darkness. Maybe he wasn't so powerless after all. Hogwarts Castle was more magnificent than Harry could have imagined. Massive stone towers reached toward the sky, windows glinted in the morning sunlight, and the entire structure seemed to hum with ancient magic. "Brilliant, isn't it?" Ron whispered as they approached the enormous wooden doors. "Charlie says you never really get used to it, even after 7 years." Harry could only nod, overwhelmed by the tangible connection to his parents. They had walked these grounds, learned magic in these classrooms, perhaps even held hands by the shimmering lake visible in the distance. Professor McGonagall met them at the entrance, her stern expression softening slightly when she saw Harry. "Welcome to Hogwarts, Mr. Potter. Mr. and Mrs. Weasley, thank you for coming." She led them through cavernous corridors and moving staircases to the Great Hall, an enormous room with a ceiling that perfectly mirrored the clear blue sky outside. "It's enchanted," McGonagall explained, noting Harry's amazed expression. "To reflect the weather. One of Rowena Ravenclaw's most impressive spellwork." At the far end of the hall, Albus Dumbledore waited alone at a small round table, rather than at the imposing staff table on the raised platform. He stood as they approached, his purple robes considerably more subdued than the last time Harry had seen him. "Harry," he greeted warmly. "Arthur, Molly. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting." Handshakes were exchanged, though Harry noticed both Weasley's greetings were cooler than Professor McGonagall's had been. "Would you like me to stay, Mr. Potter?" McGonagall asked directly. Harry considered, then nodded. Something about the professor's no-nonsense demeanor made him feel safer. They sat around the table, an awkward silence falling until Dumbledore spoke. "Harry, I've asked to see you today primarily to apologize. My decisions regarding your placement and guardianship were deeply flawed. While I believed I was acting in your best interest, the result caused you considerable suffering, for which I am truly sorry." The directness of the apology surprised Harry, who had expected more meandering explanations first. "Why?" he asked simply. "Why did you leave me with them when they hated magic?" "Hated me?" Dumbledore sighed. "When your mother sacrificed herself to save you, she invoked ancient magic, blood protection. As long as you lived with someone sharing her blood, that protection would continue, keeping you safe from Voldemort's followers who might seek revenge." "But Voldemort was gone," Harry pointed out. "His most loyal followers weren't," Dumbledore countered gently. "The Lestranges, for instance, attacked the Longbottoms, another family with a child born as the 7th month died, barely a week after Voldemort's fall." Harry frowned. "But you could have checked on me. Made sure they were treating me okay." "You're absolutely right," Dumbledore agreed, surprising Harry again with his candor. "My gravest error was not monitoring your situation properly. I placed detection charms around the property and arranged for Mrs. Figg to live nearby, but I never personally verified your welfare. I trusted that family bonds would overcome Petunia's bitterness toward magic. I was wrong." "And the money?" Molly prompted when Dumbledore paused. "Another serious misjudgment," he admitted. "I arranged the stipend believing it would ensure your proper care and perhaps soften their resentment. Instead, it seems to have funded their son's indulgences while you went without. Again, my lack of direct oversight was inexcusable." Harry studied the old wizard, searching for signs of deception but finding only what seemed like genuine remorse. "What about my parents' other money? The investments and properties?" Dumbledore nodded gravely. "After Voldemort's fall, I believed, and still believe, that he will one day return. I directed those funds toward maintaining vigilance, gathering intelligence, developing protective measures. I should have established a proper trust with oversight, rather than acting unilaterally. It was an abuse of my position as your magical guardian, albeit with protective intentions." "So you were preparing for another war," Arthur stated, using Harry's inheritance without authorization. "Yes," Dumbledore said simply. "It was wrong, regardless of my intentions." Harry absorbed this, emotions conflicted. The explanations made a certain logical sense, even if they didn't excuse the outcomes. "I have something for you," Dumbledore continued, producing a wrapped package from his robes. "This belonged to your father. He loaned it to me shortly before he died. It's time it was returned to its rightful owner." Harry accepted the package hesitantly, unwrapping it to reveal a shimmering, silvery cloth that seemed to flow like water. "An invisibility cloak," McGonagall explained, her eyebrows raised in surprise. "And quite an extraordinary one, at that." Harry ran his fingers across the silky material. "My dad's. It's been in the Potter family for generations," Dumbledore confirmed. "James used it extensively during his time at Hogwarts, often for rule-breaking, I might add." A ghost of a smile crossed Harry's face as he draped the cloak over his arm, watching it disappear. "There's more we should discuss about your parents, about the night they died, and about your future," Dumbledore said. "But perhaps that can wait for another day, when you're ready." Harry wrapped the cloak carefully and placed it in his lap, his young mind processing everything he'd learned. Finally, he looked directly at Dumbledore. "I understand why you thought the blood protection was important," he said slowly. "But I wasn't protected from the Dursleys. And being loved is important too." "A profound truth that I failed to adequately consider," Dumbledore agreed, his blue eyes suspiciously damp. "You are remarkably wise for your years, Harry." Harry shrugged uncomfortably at the praise. "The Weasleys are my family now. But I'd still like to learn about my parents from people who knew them. And about Voldemort, and why I survived when they didn't." "I would be honored to share those memories with you," Dumbledore said solemnly. "And to introduce you to others who knew them well, Remus Lupin, for instance, who was among your father's closest friends." "Professor Lupin has already agreed to visit the Burrow next weekend," Arthur interjected, making it clear who would be controlling access to Harry. Dumbledore nodded in acceptance. "As for Voldemort and that night, there are aspects of that story that are perhaps best saved for when you're a bit older. But I promise that before you begin at Hogwarts, you will know everything you need to know." Harry considered this, then nodded. It seemed fair enough for now. "One last thing, Harry," Dumbledore said. "I understand you've been experiencing some unusual wandless magic. Professor McGonagall has kindly offered to provide some basic instruction during the summers before you officially begin at Hogwarts, if you're interested, of course." Harry's eyes widened. "You mean learning to control it? On purpose?" "Within Ministry guidelines," McGonagall clarified. "Theory, control exercises, and the occasional, supervised practical demonstration." "Wicked," Harry breathed, excitement temporarily overshadowing the heavier aspects of the conversation. As they prepared to leave, Dumbledore asked for a private moment with Arthur and Molly. Harry waited by the entrance with Professor McGonagall, clutching his father's invisibility cloak. "Your parents would be proud of how you've handled yourself today, Mr. Potter," McGonagall said unexpectedly. "Particularly your mother. Lily had a remarkable capacity for understanding complex situations, even at a young age." "You taught them?" Harry asked eagerly. "For 7 years. Your father was gifted but mischievous, transfiguration came naturally to him. Your mother was brilliant across all subjects, but especially charms and potions." A rare smile crossed McGonagall's face. "She had your eyes. Exactly your eyes." Harry absorbed this precious information like a sponge. "Were they happy? Together, I mean." "Deliriously," McGonagall confirmed. "Though it took James some years to mature enough for Lily to give him a chance. They were head boy and girl in their final year, rather surprising in James's case, but Dumbledore saw something in him." Her expression grew wistful. "When you were born, I've never seen two people more in love with a child. Your father brought photos to a meeting of the Or," she stopped abruptly. "To a staff meeting. Couldn't stop showing you off." Harry felt a lump forming in his throat. These small details were worth more to him than all the gold in Gringotts. Across the hall, the conversation between Dumbledore and the Weasleys appeared intense but not hostile. Finally, they shook hands and returned to where Harry waited. "Ready to go home, dear?" Molly asked, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. Home. The word still gave Harry a small thrill. Yes. But, can we come back sometime? To see more of Hogwarts? I'm sure that can be arranged, McGonagall said. Perhaps when you begin your control lessons. As they departed, Harry glanced back at Dumbledore, who stood watching them leave with an expression Harry couldn't quite decipher, something between sadness and hope. What did he want to talk about? Harry asked Arthur as they walked toward Hogsmeade Village, where they would flew back to the Burrow. Order business, Arthur replied vaguely. Nothing for you to worry about now. But the slight crease between Arthur's eyebrows suggested otherwise. Alastair, mad-eyed, Moody stomped through the Burrow's garden gate, his magical eye swiveling in all directions as if expecting an ambush from the raspberry bushes. Constant vigilance, he barked at no one in particular as he approached the kitchen door. Inside, an unusual gathering had assembled. Arthur and Molly Weasley sat at the kitchen table with Remus Lupin, a prematurely graying young man with shabby robes and kind eyes. Andromeda Tonks, elegant despite her simple attire, sat beside her pink-haired daughter Nymphadora. Minerva McGonagall and Kingsley Shacklebolt completed the group. "Where's Dumbledore?" Moody demanded as he clunked inside. "Not invited," Arthur replied firmly. "This isn't an order meeting, Alastair. It's a security consultation for Harry's protection." Moody grunted, taking a seat that allowed him to watch both the door and window simultaneously. Same difference. The boy's safety has always been the Order's primary concern. And yet, Andromeda said smoothly, the Order's leader placed him in an abusive home for 7 years. Perhaps it's time for a fresh approach. Before Moody could retort, Arthur intervened. "We're not here to relitigate past decisions. Harry's upstairs with our children, and we need to finalize security arrangements that balance protection with allowing him a normal childhood." Lupin spoke for the first time, his voice soft but firm. James and Lily would have wanted him to know joy, to play, to make friends. Security that isolates him would dishonor their sacrifice. Agreed, Kingsley's deep voice resonated. But the threat remains real. My sources at the Ministry confirm increased activity among former Death Eater associates. Lucius Malfoy has been hosting private gatherings. Plotting or socializing? Andromeda asked skeptically. Difficult to determine, Kingsley admitted. But his interest in Harry's guardianship was concerning. The Fidelius is holding, Moody reported. I've personally tested it from all approaches. Unless I actively think the secret Dumbledore provided, I can't find the property. Bill has nearly completed the modified blood wards, Arthur added. Using a combination of Harry's blood freely given and sympathetic magic linking to Lily's sacrifice. Not as powerful as the original protection, but substantial. And I've been teaching Harry control exercises, McGonagall interjected. His wandless abilities are remarkable. With proper training, he could become his own best defense. He's 8. Molly protested. Nearly 9, Tonks pointed out. And if what McGonagall says is true, he's got raw talent most adult wizards would envy. The question remains, Lupin said, redirecting the conversation, do we believe Harry is currently in immediate danger? Or is this precautionary? An uncomfortable silence fell. Both, Kingsley finally said. No specific threat has been identified, but Dumbledore remains convinced Voldemort will return. If he's right, Harry must be protected not just physically, but prepared mentally and emotionally. Without robbing him of his childhood, Molly insisted. He's already lost too much. A balanced approach, then, Andromeda suggested. Maintain the Fidelius. Complete the modified wards. Allow supervised outings to wizarding locations with appropriate security. Continue his magical education at an appropriate pace. And social interaction? Lupin asked. James would go mad knowing his son was being kept isolated. The Weasley children, certainly, McGonagall said. Perhaps supervised playdates with other trustworthy families. The Longbottoms, the Bones, perhaps even the Lovegoods. Arthur nodded. Augusta has already extended an invitation for Harry to meet Neville. Apparently, they were together occasionally as infants, before. He trailed off, the unspoken tragedy hanging in the air. Good, Moody growled. Different locations, irregular schedules. Makes it harder to plan an attack. Alastair. Molly scolded. We're discussing children's playdates, not military operations. Same thing when it comes to Potter, Moody retorted unapologetically. What about Harry's public image? Andromeda asked. The Prophet has been running speculative pieces daily since the scandal broke. Half the wizarding world thinks Dumbledore was embezzling funds, the other half thinks the goblins engineered a coup against him. Let them speculate, Arthur said firmly. Harry's not doing interviews or photo opportunities. He's a child, not a symbol. He's both, Kingsley said gently. Whether we like it or not. The boy who lived carries symbolic weight that affects public opinion, politics, even international relations. Molly's expression hardened. Well, he's our child now, and we say he deserves privacy and normalcy. Here, Lupin murmured approvingly. As the adults continued discussing security measures and public relations strategies, none noticed the thin, flesh-colored string extending from under the kitchen door, up the stairs, and into the ears of Fred, George, Ron, and Harry, who listened intently on the landing above. Wicked, Fred whispered, admiring his and George's newest invention. Extendable ears work perfectly. Shoo! Ron hissed. I can't hear what Kingsley's saying about Malfoy. Harry listened with mixed feelings to the adults planning his life. Part of him resented being discussed like a security problem rather than a person, but another part felt strangely comforted by how seriously they all took his safety. Are Death Eaters really still after you? Ron whispered. Harry shrugged. Dunno. But that Malfoy bloke really wanted guardianship, according to your dad. Dad says Malfoy's son is a right git, Ron confided. Starting at Hogwarts same year as us. Guys. George suddenly hissed. Moody's eye. It can see through, constant vigilance. Moody's voice bellowed from below, followed by a sharp tug on the extendable ear that sent all four boys tumbling backward. Busted, they trudged downstairs to face the assembled adults, most of whom were failing to hide their amusement. Only Moody and Molly looked genuinely displeased. Eavesdropping is a security risk, Moody growled. Could have been feeding false information if we'd known you were listening. And it's rude, Molly added, though with less heat than Harry expected. Sorry, Harry said, speaking for the group. But if you're all planning my life, don't I deserve to know about it? The adults exchanged glances, Lupin's lips twitching suspiciously. James would have said exactly the same thing, he commented to no one in particular. Fine, Arthur conceded. Harry, only Harry, can stay for the rest of the discussion. The rest of you, outside. The Weasley boys groaned but complied, Fred and George pausing only to whisper to Harry, get all the details. As Harry took a seat at the table, feeling suddenly very small among the adults, Lupin studied him with a wistful expression. You look so much like James, he said softly. But you have, my mother's eyes, Harry finished with a small smile. Professor McGonagall told me. Lupin chuckled. It's what everyone says upon meeting you, I'm afraid. But it's true. He extended a hand. Remus Lupin. I was a friend of your parents. One of their best friends, actually. You're coming to visit next weekend? Harry asked eagerly. If that's still agreeable, Lupin confirmed. I have many stories to share. Some of which might even be appropriate for young ears. Tonks snorted, her hair shifting from pink to purple. The edited versions, I hope. I've heard about the Marauders. Harry filed this intriguing reference away to ask about later. Now, Harry, Andromeda Tonks said, her aristocratic features softening, we were discussing your security and education. Do you have any thoughts or preferences you'd like to share? Harry considered the question seriously. I want to learn magic. As much as I can, as fast as I can. McGonagall nodded approvingly. But I also want to be normal sometimes, he continued. To play with Ron and his brothers and maybe meet other kids my age. I've never really had friends before. This admission brought a pained look to several adult faces. And I want to understand everything. About my parents, about Voldemort, several people flinched. About why people keep staring at me in Diagon Alley. About why that Malfoy person wants to control me, whatever that means. Moody barked a laugh. Straight to the point. Good lad. A reasonable set of requests, Kingsley acknowledged. Balanced, as Andromeda suggested. We can work with that, Arthur agreed, smiling at Harry. Knowledge, friendship, and security. A solid foundation. As the adults resumed their discussion, now including Harry in a way that made him feel respected rather than coddled, he felt a surge of gratitude toward the grumpy goblin who'd started it all by auditing Dumbledore's accounts. That simple act of financial diligence had changed everything. For the first time in his life, Harry Potter wasn't just surviving, he was beginning to thrive. In a hidden chamber far beneath Gringotts, Senior Auditor Bloodfong addressed the Goblin High Council. The Potter audit has yielded unexpected benefits, he reported. Dumbledore's influence has waned. The Potter heir has been removed from neglectful conditions. And Wizarding Britain has been reminded that financial misconduct, even by their greatest wizard, will not be tolerated by Gringotts. The eldest council member, a female goblin with silver braids and battle scars across her face, leaned forward. And the Potter accounts? Now properly managed through a diverse trust. Junior Auditor Griphook has been assigned as the Gringotts representative. The boy's inheritance is secure. Good, the elder said. And the artifact? Bloodfong hesitated. Still unlocated. Dumbledore returned the invisibility cloak, but the other items remain scattered. The Potter vault contains no record of the stone. Murmurs spread through the council. Monitor the situation, the elder commanded. The boy may yet lead us to what was stolen from us centuries ago. The Deathly Hallows must one day return to goblin hands. Bloodfong bowed deeply. As you command, Elder Grimclaw. For now, the boy grows in power and knowledge, unaware of his true significance. When the time comes. When the time comes, Elder Grimclaw finished, the debt wizards owe our kind will finally be repaid. Through Harry Potter himself. Chapter 3, New Foundations, Focus, Mr. Potter. Intention shapes magic as much as incantation. Harry squinted at the feather lying on the desk before him. 3 months of weekly lessons with Professor McGonagall had improved his control significantly, but wandless levitation still drained him like nothing else. Remember, visualization is key, McGonagall continued, watching him with her characteristic blend of sternness and patience. Harry nodded, took a deep breath, and narrowed his world to just the feather. He pictured it rising smoothly, imagined the sensation of lifting it with invisible hands. His fingertips tingled with gathering power. Up, he commanded silently. Float. The feather twitched, then rose 6 inches and hovered steadily. Harry grinned triumphantly, sweat beading on his forehead despite the autumn chill in the Burrow's kitchen. Excellent, McGonagall said, allowing herself a small smile. Now, move it in a circle. Harry's face scrunched with effort as he directed the feather into a wobbly orbit. He managed 2 full rotations before his concentration broke, and the feather fluttered back to the table. Sorry, he panted. Still can't hold it long. No apologies necessary. What you're accomplishing at your age is extraordinary, McGonagall assured him. Most adult wizards require wands precisely because wandless magic demands such mental focus and magical stamina. Will it get easier with practice? Harry asked, accepting the glass of water Molly handed him from where she'd been observing. Undoubtedly. Your magical core strengthens like any muscle. McGonagall checked her pocket watch. That's sufficient for today. Any longer and you'll exhaust yourself. Harry nodded, grateful for the reprieve despite his eagerness to continue. 3 months of magical education had taught him his first real lesson about magic. It had physical costs. Remember your meditation exercises before bed, McGonagall added, gathering her teaching materials. Proper mental discipline will accelerate your progress considerably. Yes, Professor, Harry replied dutifully, though both adults caught his grimace. Sitting still for 15 minutes visualizing magical flow was far less exciting than making things float. I've left some theoretical reading as well, McGonagall continued, ignoring his expression. Basic principles of transfiguration. Nothing practical yet, but the groundwork will serve you well when you arrive at Hogwarts. Thank you for continuing these lessons, Molly said, walking McGonagall to the door. Arthur and I appreciate it enormously. It's my pleasure, McGonagall replied. His aptitude is remarkable. James would be strutting about insufferably if he could see. Harry perked up at the mention of his father. Would he really be proud? Of the wandless stuff? McGonagall's expression softened. Immensely. Though your mother would be reminding you about theory and caution while your father encouraged more dramatic demonstrations. This image, his parents with different but complementary reactions, warmed Harry from within. The past 3 months had filled in countless details about James and Lily Potter, each one a precious addition to the mental portrait he was building. After McGonagall departed, Harry found Ron and Ginny in the garden, degnoming for the 3rd time that week. How'd the lesson go? Ron asked, grabbing a gnome by its legs and spinning it dizzy. Got the feather to circle twice, Harry reported, joining them in the gnome clearing effort. Brilliant. Ron grinned. Better than last time. Still exhausting though, Harry admitted, grabbing his first gnome. The creature bit his finger, and Harry yelped. Instantly, a spark of blue magic zapped the gnome, sending it tumbling backward with a dazed expression. Whoa! Ron exclaimed. Did you do that on purpose? No, Harry said, examining his finger where a small welt was forming. Still happens sometimes when I'm surprised. McGonagall says emotional magic is the most instinctive kind. Can you teach me? Ginny asked, speaking directly to Harry without blushing for possibly the first time. 3 months of daily exposure had gradually eroded her shyness. Dunno how, Harry replied honestly. McGonagall says wandless magic can't really be taught, just developed if you already have the knack for it. Not fair, Ron grumbled good-naturedly. First you're a natural on a broom, now this. Save some talent for the rest of us, mate. Harry grinned, launching another gnome over the garden wall. His friendship with Ron had deepened into something he treasured, casual banter, shared activities, and a complete lack of the jealousy he'd always felt from Dudley. Even when Harry showed magical aptitude that Ron didn't possess, his friend seemed more impressed than envious. Speaking of brooms, Harry said, race you to the apple orchard after we finish? I've been practicing that diving turn. You're on, Ron agreed. But we should get Fred and George too. More fun with 4. And me, Ginny insisted. Ron rolled his eyes. Fine, 5 then. As they continued clearing gnomes, Harry reflected on how utterly his life had transformed since his birthday. His 9th birthday had been celebrated with a proper party, his first ever, complete with a homemade cake, presents, and friends. Not just the Weasleys, but Neville Longbottom and his formidable grandmother, Susan Bones and her Aunt Amelia, and even Luna Lovegood and her unusual father from just over the hill. The memory of blowing out candles surrounded by people who genuinely liked him still brought a lump to Harry's throat when he thought about it. "Earth to Harry," Ron called, waving a hand before his face. "You went all dreamy again." "Just thinking," Harry replied, tossing his final gnome. "About tomorrow?" Ginny asked perceptively. Harry nodded. Tomorrow marked his first official visit to Gringotts as the Potter heir, a formal meeting with his account manager to understand his inheritance and responsibilities. "Nervous?" Ron asked as they headed toward the orchard, calling for the twins as they passed the house. "A bit," Harry admitted. "Griphook's letters have been full of terms I don't really understand. Investment portfolios and estate management and proxy voting rights." "Dad'll help translate," Ron assured him. "Besides, you're rich. What's to worry about?" "It's not about the money," Harry tried to explain. It's my parents' legacy. I don't want to mess it up." Before Ron could respond, Fred and George bounded out of the house, brooms in hand. "Ready to lose spectacularly, young Potter?" Fred challenged. "In your dreams, Weasley," Harry retorted, his concerns temporarily forgotten in the rush of friendly competition. As they raced toward the makeshift Quidditch pitch, Harry's worries about Gringotts faded beneath the simple joy of belonging, a feeling that, even after 3 months, still felt miraculous every single day. The marble halls of Gringotts Bank felt even more imposing than Harry remembered. Goblins scurried between desks, counting gems or weighing gold, while wizards waited in queues with varying degrees of patience. "This way, Mr. Potter," Griphook said, leading their small party down a side corridor. The young goblin had met them at the entrance, clearly anticipating their arrival. Arthur walked beside Harry, with Bill Weasley following behind. As a Gringotts employee himself, Bill had taken personal leave to attend the meeting, offering his expertise in navigating goblin customs and financial terminology. "Remember," Bill murmured, "goblins value directness and honesty. Don't pretend to understand something if you don't." Harry nodded nervously, adjusting his new robes. Molly had insisted he dress formally for the occasion, purchasing proper wizarding attire that actually fit him. The dark green robes matched his eyes and made him look, according to Ginny's whispered assessment, like a proper wizard. Griphook stopped before an ornate door bearing the Potter family crest, a shield with a stylized stag and doe on either side of what looked like 3 triangular shapes arranged in a pattern Harry didn't recognize. "Your family's consultation room," Griphook explained, touching the door with one long finger. It swung open silently, revealing a chamber that managed to be both imposing and comfortable simultaneously. Dark wood paneling lined the walls, interspersed with tapestries showing various scenes of Potter family history. A large table dominated the center, surrounded by chairs sized for both humans and goblins. At the far end hung a larger version of the Potter crest. "Please be seated," Griphook indicated. "Account Director Barchoke will join us momentarily." As they sat, Harry whispered to Bill, "I thought Griphook was my account manager." "Junior manager," Bill clarified quietly. "Barchoke is the senior director for all Noble House accounts. It's a sign of respect that he's attending personally." The door opened again, admitting an older goblin with silver-streaked hair and a scar running from his left eye to his chin. He carried several folders and was followed by a younger female goblin bearing a wooden box. "Heir Potter," Barchoke greeted formally. "I am Barchoke, Senior Account Director. This is Nagnok, our legal documentation specialist." Harry stood, remembering Bill's coaching. "Director Barchoke, thank you for meeting with me. May your gold always flow and your enemies tremble." A flicker of surprise crossed the goblin's face, followed by what might have been approval. "And may your vaults prosper and your magic strengthen. You are well advised in goblin courtesies." Harry glanced gratefully at Bill, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Now," Barchoke continued as they all sat, "we have much to discuss regarding your inheritance. Before we begin, I must authenticate your identity." Nagnok stepped forward, placing the wooden box on the table and opening it to reveal a silver dagger and a sheet of parchment. A drop of blood on the parchment will confirm you are indeed Harry James Potter, heir to the ancient house of Potter, Barchoke explained. Harry hesitated only briefly before extending his hand. Nagnock efficiently pricked his finger and pressed it to the parchment. The drop of blood spread in intricate patterns, forming what looked like a family tree with Harry's name at the bottom, connecting upward to James and Lily Potter. Identity confirmed, Barchoke announced. Now we may proceed with full disclosure. For the next hour, Harry listened as Barchoke explained the Potter estate in detail, far beyond what had been revealed during the Wisengamot hearings. Arthur occasionally clarified a point, while Bill provided context for goblin-specific terms. Your liquid assets total approximately 3.2 million galleons, Barchoke said, sliding a ledger toward Harry. This includes your family vault, trust vault, and various investment accounts. Under the new trust arrangement, you receive quarterly statements of all transactions. Harry nodded, though the amount meant little to him in practical terms. And the properties? The cottage in Godric's Hollow remains under historical preservation, Barchoke replied. The ministry maintains it as a memorial, though ownership remains with you. Should you wish to reclaim it for private use, that option exists. I'd like to visit it, Harry said quietly. Sometime soon. Arthur placed a supportive hand on his shoulder. We can arrange that. Barchoke continued, the manor house in Devon is currently sealed with preservation charms. It would require significant restoration to be habitable again, as it has been unused since your grandparents' passing. The Cornwall property remains leased until next summer, generating 300 galleons monthly. The London townhouse is also sealed, though in better condition. What happens to all this when I come of age? Harry asked. At 17, you assume full control of the estate, Barchoke explained. Until then, the trust manages day-to-day operations, with major decisions requiring your input as you grow older. Beginning today, certain heirloom items can be claimed, and limited withdrawals from your trust vault are permitted with guardian approval. Heirlooms? Harry perked up, curious about any additional connections to his family. Nagnock produced another folder. Inventoried magical items from the Potter vaults, excluding those of significant monetary value, which remain secured until your majority. Harry scanned the list eagerly: James Potter's Quidditch equipment, complete set, Lily Potter's charm journals and research notes, 7 volumes, Potter family photo albums, 12 volumes, various jewelry items, listed separately, collection of historical texts and grimoires, Potter family magic, enchanted items of household use, listed separately. Can I see some of these today? Harry asked hesitantly. Certainly, Barchoke replied. After our meeting, Junior Manager Griphook can escort you to the family vault for a preliminary viewing. However, removal of items requires formal documentation. The meeting continued with explanations of the Potter business investments, proxy voting rights for Wisengamot matters, currently assigned to Andromeda Tonks, and educational trust provisions that would cover not only Harry's Hogwarts expenses but additional tutoring or mastery studies if desired. Finally, Barchoke said, there is the matter of your political standing. Upon reaching your majority, you will be eligible to claim the Potter family seat on the Wisengamot. Until then, you may begin learning about wizarding governance and political matters if you wish. I think that's enough for one day, Arthur interjected gently, noting Harry's slightly overwhelmed expression. Perhaps we could focus on the immediate priorities, visiting the vault and establishing regular withdrawal parameters for Harry's personal use. Barchoke nodded. A reasonable approach. I would, however, recommend that Heir Potter begin receiving quarterly statements directly. Financial literacy is best developed early. I'd like that, Harry said, sitting straighter. I want to understand where everything stands. The meeting concluded with Harry signing several documents, his first official acts as the Potter heir. As the quill left the final parchment, a subtle golden glow surrounded him briefly. The family magic acknowledges you, Barchoke explained, looking impressed. Unusual at your age. Your magical core must be particularly developed. Bill raised an eyebrow but said nothing until they were following Griphook toward the carts that would take them to the Potter family vault. "That was remarkable, Harry," he said quietly. "Family magic usually doesn't respond until magical maturity, around 14 or 15. Is that good?" Harry asked. "It's uncommon," Bill replied carefully. "Like your wandless abilities. You're not an average wizard, Harry." Before Harry could process this, they reached the carts. The subsequent wild ride into the depths of Gringotts distracted him completely, twisting, turning, and plummeting at speeds that made his stomach lurch and a wild grin spread across his face. "Brilliant," he exclaimed as they screeched to a halt before a massive vault door bearing the Potter crest. "Vault 687, Griphook announced. "Potter family vault. Place your hand on the crest, Herr Potter." Harry did as instructed. The door shimmered with blue light before swinging open silently, revealing a cathedral-like space that made him gasp. Mountains of gold, silver, and bronze coins occupied only a small portion of the vault. The majority held furniture, bookshelves, display cases, and trunks, generations of Potter family possessions carefully preserved. "We have 90 minutes before our meeting with Andromeda," Arthur reminded gently. "Take your time, but remember we can always return." Harry nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. He moved forward slowly, drawn to a glass display case near the center that seemed to contain what he sought most, connections to his parents. Inside lay Quidditch robes in Gryffindor crimson bearing the name Potter and the number 7. Beside them, a golden snitch rested on a velvet cushion, an engraving reading, Championship Match 1977, MVP JP. "Your father was a seeker?" Harry asked, surprised. "I thought McGonagall said he was a chaser." "Started as chaser," Griphook commented unexpectedly. "Switched positions his final year when the team needed a seeker." "Your father visited this vault regularly?" "He spoke of Quidditch often." Harry stared at the goblin, startled by this personal insight. Griphook seemed to realize his lapse in professional detachment and quickly moved away, pretending to examine inventory records. Continuing his exploration, Harry discovered a bookshelf containing the photo albums mentioned in the inventory. With trembling hands, he pulled one marked James and Lily, Wedding, and opened it. The magical photographs moved, of course. His parents danced, laughed, fed each other cake, and waved at the camera. In every image, they radiated happiness. Harry recognized Remus Lupin, looking much younger and healthier, and a handsome man with long black hair who always stood closest to his father. "Who's that?" Harry asked Arthur, pointing to the unknown man. Arthur's expression tightened. "That's Sirius Black. He was your father's best friend and your godfather." "I have a godfather?" Harry asked, surprised. "Why haven't I met him? Why didn't he take me after my parents died?" Arthur hesitated. "It's complicated, Harry. He was arrested shortly after your parents' death. He's in Azkaban, the wizard prison." "For what?" Harry demanded, shock and confusion evident. "Perhaps this is a conversation better continued with Andromeda," Arthur suggested gently. "She's related to Sirius and knows the case details better than I do." Harry frowned but nodded, making a mental note to ask Andromeda directly. He returned the wedding album and selected another marked Harry's first year, holding it against his chest without opening it. That one he wanted to explore privately. He continued exploring, discovering his mother's journals, handwritten books filled with complex charm theory and experimental notes that he couldn't begin to understand but treasured nonetheless. He selected one that appeared to contain the most personal entries among the magical research. In a corner, he found a small jewelry box containing what must have been his mother's personal items. Inside lay a delicate gold necklace with a lily pendant, a charm bracelet with various meaningful symbols, and a ring box containing what appeared to be his parents' wedding bands. "Can I take these?" he asked Griphook, gesturing to the photo album, journal, and jewelry box. "Those items fall within permitted removal parameters," Griphook confirmed, producing a form. Sign here to acknowledge receipt. As Harry signed, Bill approached with a small, ornate wooden box he'd discovered on a high shelf. "Harry, you might want to see this. It's labeled, 'For Harry, when ready.'" The box was locked, with no visible keyhole. Instead, a small indentation in the shape of the Potter crest adorned the front. "Blood lock, grip hook identified. Only a Potter can open it." Harry pressed his thumb to the indentation. The box warmed beneath his touch, and the lid popped open to reveal a letter in an envelope addressed simply, "Harry," in neat handwriting. His heart hammered in his chest. "Is this from my parents?" The magical signature suggests it was created by Lily Potter, Griphook confirmed, running a finger near but not touching the envelope. "Preserved with stasis charms to activate only when opened by you." With hands that shook slightly, Harry carefully took the envelope. I'll read this later. In private." "Of course," Arthur said softly. "Would you like to explore more, or shall we prepare to meet Andromeda?" Harry looked around the vault, overwhelmed by the wealth of history surrounding him. "I'll come back," he decided. "This is too much for one visit." As they prepared to leave, Harry clutching his small collection of treasures, he felt both lighter and heavier, carrying tangible connections to his parents while shouldering the weight of their legacy. The estate, the Wisengamot seat, the family magic, all of it waited for him to grow into the role he'd inherited too young. But for now, he had photos to examine, a journal to decode, and a mysterious letter to read when he felt ready to hear his mother's words from beyond the grave. Andromeda Tonks's office embodied the woman herself, elegant but practical, traditional yet approachable. Law books lined the walls, but comfortable chairs invited conversation rather than intimidation. "Harry," she greeted warmly, "how wonderful to see you again. How did your Gringotts meeting go?" "Overwhelming," Harry admitted honestly. "But good. I brought some things from the vault." "Excellent," Andromeda smiled. "Connecting with your heritage is important. Now, Arthur mentioned you had questions about Sirius Black." Harry nodded, settling into the chair across from her desk while Arthur took a seat nearby. "I saw him in my parents' wedding photos. Mr. Weasley said he's my godfather but he's in prison." Andromeda's expression grew solemn. "Yes. Sirius is my cousin, actually. The situation is complicated and tragic." "What did he do?" Harry asked directly. Andromeda exchanged a glance with Arthur before answering carefully. "He was arrested for betraying your parents' location to Voldemort and for killing another of their friends, Peter Pettigrew, along with 12 Muggle bystanders." Harry felt like he'd been punched. He helped Voldemort find my parents. But he was their friend. Dad's best friend. That's what made it so shocking, Andromeda replied. No one saw it coming. Sirius came from a dark family, my family, but he had rejected their ways. He and James were like brothers. Harry struggled to reconcile the laughing man in the photographs with this betrayal. Did he admit it? Did he say why? That's where things get murky, Andromeda said, leaning forward. He was captured at the scene of Pettigrew's murder, reportedly laughing hysterically. According to records, he never received a formal trial due to the chaos following Voldemort's fall. He was sent directly to Azkaban. Without a trial? Arthur interjected, looking surprised. I knew the process was expedited, but I hadn't realized there was no trial whatsoever. The Ministry was operating under emergency powers, Andromeda explained. Many procedures were abbreviated. Barty Crouch Sr. was particularly aggressive about incarcerating suspected Death Eaters quickly. But without a trial, how do they know he's guilty? Harry asked, logic cutting through emotion. Andromeda smiled slightly, approval in her eyes. A fair question. The evidence was considered overwhelming. Multiple witnesses saw him cornered by Pettigrew, heard Pettigrew accuse him of betraying the Potters, and then witnessed the explosion. Only Pettigrew's finger was found afterward. Still, Harry persisted, shouldn't everyone get a trial? What if there's more to the story? In principle, absolutely, Andromeda agreed. In practice, the ministry considered the matter closed. Sirius has been in Azkaban for nearly 8 years now. Harry frowned, processing this information. Could I see him? Ask him myself. Arthur looked alarmed. Harry, Azkaban is guarded by Dementors, dark creatures that drain happiness and hope. It's no place for a child. Besides, Andromeda added gently, prolonged exposure to Dementors affects the mind. The Sirius you'd meet now wouldn't be the same man from those photos, regardless of guilt or innocence. Harry clutched the photo album tighter. So I just never know. Never understand why my parents' best friend betrayed them. Andromeda studied him thoughtfully. Your interest raises valid questions about judicial process. As one of your trustees and legal advisor, I could potentially review the case files, not to challenge the conviction necessarily, but to provide you with more complete information. Would that be possible? Harry asked eagerly. I'll make inquiries, Andromeda promised. Now, we should move on to the other matters we need to discuss today, primarily, the legal framework of your guardianship with the Weasleys. For the next hour, Andromeda explained the formal adoption process that Arthur and Molly had initiated. Unlike temporary guardianship, magical adoption would create permanent familial bonds while preserving Harry's status as the Potter heir. The blood protection issue remains our biggest hurdle, Andromeda explained. Bill Weasley's team has made progress with modified wards, but the adoption ritual interacts with magical protections in complex ways. Could it weaken the protection from my mother? Harry asked, understanding enough about magical theory now to grasp the concern. Potentially, Arthur confirmed. Which is why we're proceeding carefully. We want you fully protected, Harry, both legally and magically. The good news, Andromeda continued, is that the Wisengamot has approved our petition to proceed with development of a customized adoption ritual. It will take several more months of research, but by your 10th birthday, we hope to make you officially a Weasley in magic and law, while maintaining your Potter heritage and protections. Harry's eyes widened. So I'd be Harry Potter Weasley? Or just keep Potter? That would be your choice, Andromeda smiled. Though for inheritance purposes, the Potter name must continue in some form. As they wrapped up the meeting, Harry felt both exhausted and exhilarated by all he'd learned. The wizarding world was far more complex than he'd initially realized, with legal, financial, and magical systems intertwining in ways that still confused him. But unlike his time with the Dursleys, adults now patiently explained things instead of punishing his questions. Each meeting, each conversation, built his understanding of the world he rightfully belonged to, and his place within it. That night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Harry sat alone in Ron's room with his treasures from the vault. Ron had tactfully given him privacy, claiming he needed to help George with something in the twins' room. First, Harry examined the photo albums more carefully. Beyond the wedding photos, he found images of his parents at Hogwarts, his mother's pregnancy, and finally, pictures of himself as a baby, laughing, crawling, riding a toy broomstick that hovered inches above the floor. In many photos, the same core group appeared with his parents, Remus Lupin, whom Harry had now met several times, Sirius Black, whose laughing face Harry struggled to reconcile with his apparent betrayal, and a smaller, mousy-haired man who must have been Peter Pettigrew, the friend Sirius had allegedly murdered. Harry studied Pettigrew's face in the photos, noting how he always seemed slightly apart from the others, his smile never quite reaching his eyes. Was he imagining that distance because he now knew how the story ended? Or had there been signs all along that something wasn't right? Setting aside the albums, Harry opened his mother's journal. Most entries focused on complex charm theory beyond his understanding, but occasionally, personal notes appeared. October 15, 1979, James thinks I'm obsessing over the protection charm variations, but if Dumbledore is right about the prophecy, we need every safeguard possible. The blood-based shield should work in theory, but the sacrifice component troubles me. There must be a way to anchor it without death. Harry's heart skipped. Prophecy? What prophecy? He flipped forward several pages. December 25, 1979, best Christmas gift ever. The charm worked in preliminary testing. If I can expand the protection radius and strengthen the anchor, it could shield our entire family. James finally admits my obsession might save us all. Still need to solve the power source problem though. The protective magic requires massive energy. More charm theory followed, increasingly complex. Harry skipped ahead again. July 31, 1980, Harry James Potter born today. 7 pounds, 6 ounces of absolute perfection. James hasn't stopped crying and grinning since they placed our son in his arms. I've never seen such love in his eyes. The protection charm research feels even more urgent now. I'd give anything, everything, to keep our boy safe. Tears welled in Harry's eyes as he traced his mother's handwriting. She had loved him so fiercely, had been working to protect him even before Voldemort targeted them specifically. The final entry gave him chills. October 10, 1981, the Fidelius is cast. Peter is secret keeper, not Sirius as originally planned. Sirius thought it too obvious a choice, that he'd be targeted first. I trust Peter, but a mother's instinct nags at me. James says I'm being paranoid. Perhaps. I've continued my protection research in secret. If anything happens to us, the blood shield will activate. I've made the ultimate contingency plan. Harry will survive, whatever comes. Harry read the entry 3 times, his hands shaking. Peter, not Sirius, had been secret keeper. But that would mean. He set the journal aside, mind racing with implications too significant to ignore. If Pettigrew had been secret keeper, then only Pettigrew could have betrayed his parents' location. Which meant Sirius Black might be innocent of at least that crime. Harry reached for the last item, the sealed letter from his mother. Did he dare read it now, with his thoughts already in turmoil? Taking a deep breath, he carefully broke the seal and unfolded the parchment. My darling Harry, if you're reading this, then our worst fears have come to pass, and your father and I are no longer with you. I've placed this letter under a charm to find you when you're old enough to understand but still young enough to be protected by the knowledge. First, know that you were loved beyond measure. From the moment we knew you were coming, you became the center of our universe. Your father would spend hours just watching you sleep, convinced you were the most miraculous thing he'd ever seen. He was right. Second, I must warn you. If we've died as I fear we might, it was not random misfortune but targeted violence. A prophecy was made before your birth suggesting you might have the power to vanquish the Dark Lord. Dumbledore knows the full contents, ask him when you're ready to hear it all. If my protective magic worked as designed, my sacrifice should have created a blood shield around you, protection that will continue as long as you remain with blood family. Petunia is your only blood relative, so you may have been placed with her. If so, I'm sorry. My sister's bitterness toward magic ran deep, but blood protection trumps comfort sometimes. Most importantly, trust your instincts. If you sense darkness gathering again, if you feel unsafe or manipulated, look deeper. Not everything is as it appears, and even good men make questionable choices when they believe they serve a greater purpose. In our vault, you'll find my research journals with the complete protection charm work. Study them when you're older, understanding my magic might save your life someday. Remember, Harry, you are the son of a marauder and a mudblood who outperformed every pureblood in our year. You come from strength, ingenuity, and absolute love. Whatever trials you face, you have everything you need to overcome them already inside you. All my love, forever, Mum. P.S. Ask Sirius about the map. And remember that Remus's furry little problem doesn't define him, he's the gentlest soul I've ever known despite it. Harry lowered the letter, tears streaming freely down his face. His mother's voice seemed to echo in his head, both comforting and disturbing with its revelations. A prophecy? Dumbledore knowing about it? And most shocking, the confirmation that Peter, not Sirius, had been their secret keeper. His godfather might have spent 8 years in Azkaban for a crime he didn't commit. Harry knew he should tell Arthur and Molly immediately, show them the journal entry and letter. But a strange caution held him back, his mother's warning to trust his instincts and her hint that even good people sometimes made questionable choices. Dumbledore had known about the prophecy. Had he also known who the real secret keeper was? If so, why had he allowed Sirius to be imprisoned without a trial? Too many questions swirled in Harry's mind for sleep to come easily. He carefully placed the journal, letter, and albums in the secret compartment beneath the floorboard that Fred and George had shown him, their designated hiding place for items requiring discretion, mainly their experimental joke products. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he would talk to Remus Lupin, who was scheduled to visit again. Remus had been part of his parents' inner circle, he might know the truth about Sirius and Peter, might explain what his mother meant about Remus's furry little problem, and the mysterious map. Harry finally drifted into uneasy sleep, his dreams filled with a high, cold laugh, a flash of green light, and the desperate voice of his mother casting not just a shield charm, but a truth charm meant to activate years later, when Harry most needed guidance from beyond the veil. Remus Lupin arrived at the burrow the next morning looking more haggard than usual. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his normally neat clothing appeared hastily donned. "Rough night?" Arthur asked sympathetically as Remus gratefully accepted a cup of strong tea from Molly. "Full moon," Remus replied quietly, then winced as he realized Harry had entered the kitchen and heard him. "Full moon." Harry repeated, his mother's letter fresh in his mind. "Does that have something to do with your furry little problem?" Remus choked on his tea. "Where did you hear that phrase?" "My mother's letter," Harry said simply, watching Remus's reaction carefully. "I found it in the Potter vault yesterday. She left it for me." Arthur and Molly exchanged concerned glances. "You found a letter from Lily?" Molly asked gently. "You didn't mention it yesterday." "I wanted to read it privately first," Harry explained. It said some things I need to ask Remus about." He turned to his parents' old friend. "Like why she called you the gentlest soul despite your furry little problem. And about a map. And most importantly, about Sirius Black and Peter Pettigrew." The teacup slipped from Remus's suddenly nerveless fingers, shattering on the kitchen floor. Nobody moved to repair it immediately. "Perhaps," Arthur suggested carefully, "you should show us this letter, Harry." Harry hesitated. "I will. But first, I need to know if Remus knows that Peter was the secret keeper, not Sirius. Because that's what my mother wrote in her journal, that they switched at the last minute because Sirius thought he was too obvious a choice." The color drained from Remus's face. That can't be right. Sirius was the secret keeper. Everyone knew that. Everyone was meant to think that, Harry pressed. That was the point, to make Voldemort target Sirius while Peter held the real secret. "It's in her journal, the last entry before they died." "Merlin's beard," Arthur whispered. "If that's true. An innocent man has been in Azkaban for 8 years, Molly finished, her hand covering her mouth in horror. Remus shook his head, clearly struggling to process this information. "I would have known. James would have told me." "Would he?" Harry asked, remembering another line from his mother's journal he hadn't mentioned. "My mother wrote that someone close to them was suspected of being a spy. They weren't sure who they could trust anymore." Pain flashed across Remus's face. "They suspected me," he whispered. "Because of my condition." "Which is what, exactly?" Harry asked directly. Remus looked to Arthur and Molly, who nodded slightly after a moment's hesitation. "I'm a werewolf, Harry," Remus said quietly. "Have been since childhood. Your father and Sirius discovered my secret at Hogwarts. Instead of rejecting me, they became animagi, wizards who can transform into animals, so they could keep me company during full moons when I transformed. Harry absorbed this revelation with remarkable composure. So that's why you look so tired today. Last night was a full moon. Remus nodded, surprised by Harry's matter-of-fact acceptance. And the map? Harry continued. A ghost of a smile touched Remus's lips. The Marauder's map. A magical parchment we created showing all of Hogwarts, including every person within it, identified by name. Quite the achievement, if I do say so myself. Your father was Prongs, his animagus form was a stag. Sirius was Padfoot, a large black dog. Peter was Wormtail, a rat. A rat, Harry repeated thoughtfully. Small enough to slip away unnoticed. Harry, Arthur interjected gently, could we see the letter and journal now? This is potentially very serious. Harry nodded, retrieving them from his hiding place. The adults read in silence, their expressions growing increasingly grave. The protection charm research, Remus murmured. Lily was always brilliant with charms. She created the blood protection that saved you deliberately, not just as a spontaneous act of sacrifice. And she specifically mentions Peter as secret keeper, Arthur noted, pointing to the journal entry. This would be considered new evidence. We need to contact Andromeda immediately, Molly decided, already moving toward the fireplace. This changes everything about Sirius's case. Wait, Remus said suddenly. Peter's animagus form, if he betrayed them and framed Sirius, he could have transformed during their confrontation. A small rat could have escaped in the chaos, leaving only a finger behind to fake his death. A heavy silence fell as they all considered this possibility. If Peter's still alive. Arthur began. He could be anywhere, Remus finished grimly. Living as a rat for 8 years. Harry had been quiet, processing everything, but now he looked up with sudden alarm. Didn't Ron find a rat in the garden about 7 years ago? The one missing a toe on its front paw. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. Molly gasped. Arthur went pale. Remus stood so quickly his chair toppled backward. Scabbers? Arthur whispered. But that's impossible. He's just an ordinary garden rat that's lived an unusually long time. How long do garden rats typically live? Remus asked tersely. 3 years at most, Molly replied, her voice shaking slightly. Scabbers has been with us for 7. Where is Ron now? Remus demanded. Where's the rat? Upstairs, probably, Harry said. Ron usually lets Scabbers sleep in his cage during the day. We need to check, Arthur decided. Carefully, without alarming Ron if we're wrong. But if there's any chance. I'll go, Harry volunteered. I can say I want to show Ron something from the vault. It won't seem suspicious. The adults exchanged glances, then nodded. Harry hurried upstairs, heart pounding. Could Ron's pet rat actually be Peter Pettigrew, the man who betrayed his parents? It seemed simultaneously absurd and terrifyingly plausible. He found Ron in their room, reading a Quidditch magazine while Scabbers snoozed in his cage on the nightstand. Hey, Harry said, trying to sound casual. Can I show you something cool from the vault? Sure, Ron replied enthusiastically, setting aside his magazine. What did you find? It's downstairs, Harry improvised. Your dad and Remus want to see your reaction too. Bring Scabbers, there's some leftover bacon from breakfast he might like. Ron shrugged, reaching for the rat's cage. He's been sleeping loads lately. Getting old, I reckon. They headed downstairs, Harry's nerves strung tight. In the kitchen, he noticed Remus had positioned himself near the door, a strategic blocking position. Arthur and Molly tried to appear normal but their tension was palpable. What's going on? Ron asked, picking up on the strange atmosphere. What did you want to show me? Actually, Ron, Arthur said gently, we need to check something about Scabbers. Could you take him out of the cage, please? Ron frowned but complied, lifting the sleeping rat. What about him? Is he sick or something? Remus stepped forward, wand now visible in his hand. Hold him still, please, Ron. This won't hurt him if he's truly a rat. What? Ron clutched Scabbers protectively. What are you talking about? But at that moment, Scabbers woke. The rat's small eyes darted around the room, taking in Remus's wand, the tense adults, Harry's serious expression. With a desperate squeal, he bit Ron's finger hard and leapt from his hands. Stupefy! Remus shouted, but the rat dodged with uncanny speed, scurrying toward a small hole in the baseboard. Accio rat! Arthur called desperately. The spell caught Scabbers mid-flight, yanking him backward through the air. Remus immediately cast another spell, one Harry didn't recognize, that hit the rat squarely as he tumbled through the air. A bright flash of light filled the kitchen. The rat began to grow and transform, limbs extending, fur receding, features morphing from rodent to human. Within seconds, a small, balding man with pointed features and watery eyes lay stunned on the Weasleys' kitchen floor. Bloody hell! Ron yelped, stumbling backward. Scabbers is a person. Not just any person, Remus said grimly. Peter Pettigrew. Supposedly dead for 8 years. Betrayer of the Potters and framer of Sirius Black. Ron looked from the unconscious man to his pet's cage and back again, his face greening. I let him sleep on my pillow. Despite the gravity of the situation, Harry couldn't help but snort at Ron's horrified expression. Arthur, Molly said urgently, contact Amelia Bones immediately. No one else, just Amelia. We can't risk this being covered up or mishandled. Arthur nodded, moving quickly to the fireplace while Remus bound the unconscious Pettigrew with magical ropes. Merlin's soggy pants, Ron breathed, still processing. My pet rat was a murderer. All this time. Hiding in plain sight, Remus confirmed grimly. The perfect cover. A beloved pet in a wizarding family, privy to all your conversations, keeping tabs on Harry once he arrived here. No one would ever suspect. Harry stared at the unconscious man who had betrayed his parents. He'd imagined Pettigrew as somehow more impressive, more obviously villainous. This pathetic, rat-faced man hardly seemed capable of outsmarting his father and Sirius Black. Yet he had. And in doing so, he'd orphaned Harry, framed Sirius, and lived comfortably as a pet for 8 years while his former friend rotted in Azkaban. What happens now? Harry asked quietly. Justice, Molly replied, putting an arm around his shoulders. Long overdue justice. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of activity. Amelia Bones arrived with 2 trusted Aurors, taking custody of the still-stunned Pettigrew. When revived under carefully controlled conditions at the Ministry, Pettigrew broke down almost immediately, confessing to everything when confronted with Veritaserum, truth potion. Word spread rapidly through the Ministry's upper echelons, though a media blackout was temporarily imposed to prevent Pettigrew's supporters, if any existed, from interfering before justice could be served. By evening, an emergency session of the Wisengamot had been called, with Amelia Bones personally overseeing the expedited case review. By the following morning, the Daily Prophet's headline screamed, Sirius Black innocent. Peter Pettigrew found alive, confesses to Potter betrayal and Muggle murders Black to be released after 8 years of wrongful imprisonment. Harry sat at the Weasleys' kitchen table, staring at the newspaper. The front page showed a haggard Sirius Black from his initial arrest alongside a recent photo of Pettigrew in Ministry custody. He'll need extensive rehabilitation, Arthur explained gently. 8 years with Dementors, it takes a severe toll on the mind. But he'll recover? Harry asked hopefully. He'll be okay eventually. With proper care, yes, Molly assured him. St. Mungo's has already prepared a specialized recovery program. When can I see him? The Weasleys exchanged glances. That's complicated, Arthur admitted. Physically, he's being released today. But mentally, he's fragile. The healers suggest limiting visitors initially while he stabilizes. Harry's face fell, though he understood the reasoning. But he knows I'm here, right? That I'm not with the Dursleys anymore. That was the first thing he asked about when he was lucid, Remus confirmed, entering the kitchen. He looked exhausted but happier than Harry had ever seen him. His exact words were, "Where's Harry? Is he safe? Does he know about me?" Harry smiled, a strange mixture of emotions churning inside him. Joy that his godfather was innocent and free. Anger that he'd lost 8 years with him. Hope that they might build a relationship now. Anxiety about what that relationship might look like. "There's more news," Remus continued, addressing the adults. "Dumbledore has stepped down as Chief Warlock, effective immediately." "Stepped down or forced out?" Arthur asked quietly. "Officially, stepping down to focus on his educational responsibilities at Hogwarts," Remus replied. Unofficially, there were questions about how much he knew regarding Sirius's lack of trial and Pettigrew's role. Did he know? Harry asked directly. Did Dumbledore know Sirius was innocent? Remus sighed. He claims he had suspicions but no proof. That he advocated for a trial but was overruled by Barty Crouch and Minister Bagnall during the post-war chaos. Convenient, Molly muttered uncharacteristically. The timing of his resignation suggests there may be more to the story, Arthur agreed. But proving what he knew or suspected is nearly impossible now. Harry absorbed this information thoughtfully. His mother's warning echoed in his mind, not everything is as it appears, and even good men make questionable choices when they believe they serve a greater purpose. Had Dumbledore allowed an innocent man to suffer in Azkaban because it served some greater plan? The possibility disturbed Harry deeply. What about my guardianship? He asked suddenly. Will it change now that Sirius is free? He is my godfather. The adults exchanged meaningful glances again. That's something to be discussed with everyone involved, Arthur said carefully. Sirius has legal standing as your godfather, but he's in no condition to assume guardianship immediately. And the blood protection considerations remain relevant. Besides, Molly added with forced cheerfulness, we've grown rather attached to you, young man. Harry smiled at her reassurance. I'm attached to you too. I don't want to leave. I just wondered if legally things would change. We'll work it out, Remus promised. Sirius would never want to disrupt your happiness or security. Once he's stabilized, we can discuss arrangements that work for everyone. Harry nodded, relieved. The past 24 hours had brought enough dramatic changes without adding another relocation to the mix. Now, Molly said briskly, breakfast first, then we need to prepare. Andromeda's bringing Sirius to her home this afternoon once he's released. She thinks seeing you briefly, just a short visit, might actually help his recovery process. Harry's heart leapt. Really? Today? If you're comfortable with it, Arthur cautioned. He won't look like the man in your parents' wedding photos, Harry. The Dementors have taken a toll. I don't care what he looks like, Harry said firmly. He's my godfather. My father's best friend. And he suffered for years because he tried to avenge my parents. Remus smiled proudly. James would say exactly the same thing. Loyalty was everything to him. He hesitated, then added, there's something else you should know, Harry. About the prophecy your mother mentioned in her letter. Harry tensed. What about it? Dumbledore has requested a meeting with you. He believes that with recent events changing the landscape so dramatically, you should be informed of certain things earlier than he had planned. The prophecy, Harry guessed. Among other matters, Remus confirmed. It's your choice whether to meet with him. Harry considered this. His feelings toward Dumbledore remained complicated, gratitude for the recent apology mixed with lingering resentment over the Dursleys and new suspicions about Sirius's imprisonment. I'll meet him, he decided finally. But not alone. I want you there, Remus. And Mr. Weasley. That's wise, Arthur agreed. When? After I see Sirius, Harry said firmly. That's more important right now. As the conversation shifted to logistics for the day ahead, Harry felt a strange sense of his world realigning. The pieces of his parents' final days were falling into place, the truth emerging from years of obfuscation and assumption. Whatever came next, meeting his godfather, learning about the prophecy, navigating the complex relationships forming around him, Harry faced it with growing confidence. He had the Weasleys. He had Remus. Soon, he would have Sirius. And he had the knowledge that his mother had loved him enough to create magical protections that transcended death itself. For a boy who had spent 7 years believing himself unwanted and unloved, that knowledge was the greatest magic of all. Andromeda Tonks's home reflected its owner, elegant but welcoming, with touches of both wizarding and muggle influence harmoniously blended. Harry fidgeted nervously in the sitting room, waiting for Sirius to arrive from St. Mungo's. Just a brief visit today, Andromeda reminded gently. The healers were quite specific about limiting excitement and emotional intensity. Harry nodded, understanding but still buzzing with anticipation. Beside him, Remus looked equally nervous, repeatedly smoothing non-existent wrinkles from his freshly pressed robes. The fireplace flared green, and a healer in lime green robes stepped through, followed by a tall, painfully thin man with long, matted black hair. Though gaunt and haunted-looking, Harry instantly recognized his godfather from the wedding photos. Sirius's eyes scanned the room, landing on Harry with such intensity that the boy felt momentarily pinned in place. Recognition, disbelief, and overwhelming emotion crossed the man's ravaged face. "Harry," he whispered, his voice hoarse from disuse. "You look just like James." Harry stood, unsure of protocol but certain of his feelings. "With my mother's eyes," he said with a small smile. "So I've been told." Sirius took a tentative step forward, then another, moving like someone who expected the floor to vanish beneath him at any moment. When he reached Harry, he slowly, carefully extended a trembling hand to touch the boy's shoulder, as if confirming he was real. "I failed you," Sirius said brokenly. "I went after Peter instead of staying with you. I'm so sorry." "You didn't fail me," Harry replied firmly. "You tried to catch the real traitor. It's not your fault the ministry didn't give you a trial." Sirius's eyes filled with tears. Would it be alright if I hugged you? I've thought about this moment for 8 years." In answer, Harry stepped forward and wrapped his arms around his godfather's waist. Sirius's embrace was gentle, almost hesitant, as if he feared breaking something precious. "Thank you," Sirius murmured into Harry's hair. "For believing in me. For finding the truth." "Actually," Harry said as they separated, "it was my mother. She left clues in her journal and a letter in the vault. She knew Peter was the secret keeper." Sirius nodded. "Lily was always the cleverest of us all. Always thinking ahead." "Mr. Black," the healer interjected gently, "remember our guidelines." Right, Sirius said, visibly pulling himself together. He gestured to the sofa. "Shall we sit?" For the next 15 minutes, they talked, carefully avoiding the most painful topics. Harry told Sirius about living with the Weasleys, about learning magic with Professor McGonagall, about flying in Quidditch. "A natural flyer, just like James," Sirius commented, his smile briefly illuminating his gaunt face with hints of his former handsome appearance. "He'd be so proud." When the healer indicated their time was nearly up, Sirius turned serious. "Harry, there's something important we need to discuss. Not today, I'm not stable enough yet. But soon." He glanced at Remus, who nodded encouragingly. "About your future. About options." "You mean where I'll live?" Harry asked. "Partly," Sirius confirmed. "As your godfather, I have certain legal rights and responsibilities. But more importantly, I made promises to your parents that I intend to keep, now that I can." "I'm happy with the Weasleys," Harry said quickly. They're wonderful. I'm glad, Sirius said sincerely. And I have no intention of disrupting what's working. But I want to be part of your life, if you'll let me. I'd like that, Harry replied without hesitation. The healer stood. We should return to St. Mungo's now, Mr. Black. You've done very well for a first outing. Sirius nodded reluctantly. One more minute. When the healer hesitated, he added, please. I've waited 8 years. With a resigned sigh, the healer agreed. Sirius turned back to Harry, reaching into his robes to retrieve a small package. This was recovered from my possessions at Azkaban, he explained. I was carrying it when I was arrested, meant to give it to you when I took custody. It's a two-way mirror. I have its match. If you ever need me, for anything, day or night, just speak my name into it, and we can talk. Harry accepted the package with surprise and gratitude. Thank you. I'll use it, I promise. I know your life is complicated right now, Sirius continued urgently. Dumbledore, the Ministry, guardianship questions, and things about your parents' deaths you don't yet know. But remember, Harry, you're not alone anymore. You have me now, for whatever that's worth. It's worth everything, Harry replied sincerely. As Sirius reluctantly departed with the healer, Harry clutched the mirrored communication device, feeling another piece of his fragmented life slide into place. His godfather was broken but healing, another adult who genuinely cared about Harry's well-being. That went well, Andromeda commented once the fireplace stopped glowing. Better than the healers expected, actually. Your presence seems to center him, Harry. Will he recover completely? Harry asked anxiously. With time, Remus assured him. Sirius was always resilient. And now he has something to recover for. Harry nodded, understanding the implicit meaning. His godfather was fighting to heal for Harry's sake, to fulfill his obligations to James and Lily Potter by protecting and guiding their son. Now, Remus continued more seriously, are you still certain you want to meet with Dumbledore today? It could wait if you're feeling overwhelmed. Harry considered this but shook his head. No, I want to know everything. About the prophecy, about why Voldemort targeted my parents specifically. I'm tired of only knowing pieces of my own story. Remus nodded approvingly. That's fair. Arthur is meeting us at Hogwarts in an hour. He hesitated before adding, just remember, Harry, knowledge comes with its own burdens. Some truths aren't easy to bear. I know, Harry said quietly. But I'd rather know a difficult truth than be protected by comfortable lies. Remus's eyebrows rose slightly. That's remarkably mature for 9 years old. Harry shrugged. The Dursleys cured me of childish illusions pretty early. The simple statement hung in the air, a reminder of all Harry had endured before finding his rightful place in the wizarding world. Well, Andromeda said briskly, breaking the somber mood, before you face Dumbledore, I suggest fortification with chocolate cake. My daughter Nymphadora, who would hex me for using that name, baked it specially when she heard you were visiting. Tonks bakes? Remus asked, looking surprised and oddly interested. When properly motivated, Andromeda replied with a knowing smile. Come along, both of you. Never confront destiny on an empty stomach, that's my personal motto. As they headed toward the kitchen, Harry felt grateful for these small moments of normalcy amid the life-changing revelations. Whatever Dumbledore revealed about the prophecy, whatever complications arose from Sirius's freedom, Harry now had something he'd never possessed at Privet Drive, a support system of adults who prioritized his well-being over convenience or greater good calculations. That knowledge made even prophecies seem manageable. Albus Dumbledore's office had changed since Harry's last visit to Hogwarts. Gone were many of the whirring silver instruments that had previously occupied tables and shelves. The space felt emptier, more austere, as if reflecting its occupants' diminished standing. Dumbledore himself looked older, the twinkle in his blue eyes noticeably dimmed. He rose as Harry entered with Remus and Arthur, gesturing to seats arranged before his desk. "Thank you for coming, Harry," he said quietly. "Especially given recent events. I imagine this has been an overwhelming time for you." Harry nodded but said nothing, waiting. He'd decided during the journey to Hogwarts to listen more than speak initially, to gather information before forming judgments. "I've asked to meet because circumstances have changed significantly," Dumbledore continued. "Your discovery of your mother's letter and journal, Pettigrew's capture, and Sirius's exoneration have accelerated a timeline I had originally envisioned unfolding much later." "You mean when I started Hogwarts?" Harry asked. "Even later, ideally," Dumbledore admitted. "Some burdens are best shouldered when one's magical and emotional maturity is more developed. Like knowing why Voldemort tried to kill me as a baby?" Harry pressed. "The prophecy my mother mentioned?" Dumbledore sighed deeply. "Precisely that. Though I must ask, how much did Lily reveal in her letter?" "Only that a prophecy existed suggesting I might have the power to vanquish Voldemort," Harry replied. "She said you knew the full contents and that I should ask you when I was ready. And you believe you're ready now?" Harry met the old wizard's gaze steadily. "I think I've earned the right to know, regardless of whether anyone thinks I'm ready." Arthur placed a supportive hand on Harry's shoulder. "We've discussed this extensively, Albus. Harry deserves the truth, presented appropriately for his age but without critical omissions." Dumbledore nodded slowly. "Very well." He rose and approached a cabinet, withdrawing a shallow stone basin etched with runes and symbols. "This is a pensieve, a device for viewing memories. I believe showing you will be more effective than merely telling you." He touched his wand to his temple, drawing out a silvery strand that he deposited in the basin. The surface swirled, then settled into an image of a younger Dumbledore sitting across from a wild-haired woman with enormous spectacles and a mystic air. "Professor Trelawney," Dumbledore explained. "During a job interview for the divination position." As they watched, the woman suddenly stiffened, her eyes rolling back. When she spoke, her voice was harsh and deep, utterly unlike her previous affected mystical tone. "The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches. Born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the seventh month dies. And the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not. And either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord will be born as the seventh month dies." The memory faded, leaving Harry staring at the swirling silver substance with a chill running down his spine. "That's it?" he finally asked. "That's why my parents died? Why I have this scar?" "A Death Eater overheard the beginning of the prophecy and reported it to Voldemort," Dumbledore confirmed. "At the time, 2 children fit the description, you and Neville Longbottom. Both born at the end of July to parents who had defied Voldemort 3 times. But he chose me," Harry said quietly. "Why?" "That, perhaps, is the most telling part," Dumbledore replied. "Voldemort, himself a half-blood, chose the half-blood child rather than the pure blood. He saw himself in you, Harry. And in doing so, he marked you as his equal, fulfilling that portion of the prophecy through his own actions." Harry's hand unconsciously rose to his scar. "So I have to kill him or he has to kill me? That's what it means, either must die at the hand of the other." Remus made a pained noise, and Arthur's grip on Harry's shoulder tightened. "Prophecies are notoriously subject to interpretation," Dumbledore said carefully. "But yes, that is the most straightforward reading." "But he's gone," Harry pointed out. "He died when he tried to kill me." Dumbledore hesitated. "I believe, and have long believed, that Voldemort is not truly gone. Defeated temporarily, yes. But not destroyed." The room fell silent as this revelation settled. "You think he'll come back?" Harry finally asked. "That's why you've been preparing? Why you used my parents' money for the order?" "Yes," Dumbledore admitted. "Though my methods were flawed and legally questionable, my concern was genuine. I believe Voldemort took measures to prevent his permanent death, measures so dark I hesitate to discuss them with someone your age. Horcruxes, Remus said suddenly. That's what you suspect, isn't it? Dumbledore looked sharply at him. How did you, Regulus? Remus replied cryptically. Before he died. He told Sirius something about the Dark Lord splitting his soul. Sirius mentioned it once, during the First War, though neither of us understood the significance then. Dumbledore's expression darkened. This is a concerning development. I had not realized Regulus Black possessed such knowledge. What's a Horcrux? Harry asked, looking between them. A repository for a fragment of soul, created through murder and dark ritual, Dumbledore explained reluctantly. As long as the Horcrux exists, its creator cannot truly die, even if their body is destroyed. Harry processed this horrifying information with remarkable composure. So Voldemort made one of these things, and that's why he didn't die completely when the killing curse rebounded? I believe he made several, Dumbledore admitted grimly. Though this is theoretical until further evidence emerges. And you've been searching for them? That's what the Order funds were used for. Partially, Dumbledore confirmed. Along with monitoring known Death Eater activities, researching protective measures, and maintaining vigilance. Harry fell silent, absorbing everything. The prophecy, Horcruxes, Voldemort's potential return, it was almost too much to comprehend. Why tell me now? He finally asked. You said you wanted to wait until I was older. Recent events have shifted the landscape considerably, Dumbledore replied. Sirius Black's freedom changes the guardianship dynamics. The discovery of your mother's letter indicates you're already aware of parts of the puzzle. And most importantly, your demonstrated magical aptitude suggests you're developing faster than I anticipated. Professor McGonagall mentioned that too, Harry said. About my wandless magic and family magic responding early. Indeed. You are exceptional, Harry, in ways beyond mere fame or prophecy. Dumbledore leaned forward. Which brings me to a proposal. I have made serious mistakes regarding your upbringing, mistakes I deeply regret. But my concern for your future remains genuine. What kind of proposal? Arthur asked warily. A compromise, Dumbledore explained. I propose a shared guardianship arrangement between the Weasleys and Sirius Black once he's recovered sufficiently. This maintains Harry's current stable environment while honoring Sirius's legal rights and incorporating his protective capabilities. And your role in this arrangement? Remus asked pointedly. Advisory only, Dumbledore assured them. I would offer guidance regarding Harry's magical education and preparation for what may come, but final decisions would rest with his guardians. Harry looked to Arthur, uncertain how to respond to this unexpected suggestion. It's an interesting proposal, Arthur said carefully. But one that requires consultation with Molly and Sirius before any decisions are made. Of course, Dumbledore agreed readily. I merely offer it as a potential path forward that serves everyone's interests, particularly Harry's. And the prophecy? Harry asked. What am I supposed to do about that? I'm 9. I can barely levitate a feather without exhausting myself. Dumbledore's expression softened. Nothing, for now, except continue your education and enjoy your childhood as much as possible. The time for directly confronting prophecy lies years in the future, if it comes at all. But you believe it will, Harry persisted. You believe Voldemort will return and I'll have to face him. I believe in preparing for possibilities without surrendering to them, Dumbledore replied. And I believe in your capacity to meet whatever challenges arise, supported by those who care for you. The conversation continued for another hour, covering various aspects of Harry's education, the emerging political landscape following Sirius's exoneration, and the blood protection considerations that remained relevant despite changed circumstances. Throughout, Harry remained thoughtful, asking occasional pointed questions that revealed his growing understanding of the wizarding world's complexities. When they finally prepared to leave, Dumbledore made one final request. Harry, may I speak with you alone for just a moment? With Arthur and Remus's permission, of course. After receiving reassuring nods from both men, Harry agreed. Once they stepped outside, Dumbledore spoke softly. I wish to apologize again, Harry. Not just for the financial improprieties or your placement with the Dursleys, but for something more fundamental, for seeing you as a piece in a larger game rather than as a child deserving of happiness and care. The unexpected candor caught Harry off guard. Thank you for saying that, sir. Your mother's warning about good men making questionable choices for what they believe is the greater good, she might well have been writing about me specifically. Dumbledore smiled sadly. Lily always saw clearer than most. She also wrote that I should trust my instincts, Harry replied. And my instincts say that you do care what happens to me, even if your methods were wrong. Your instincts serve you well, Dumbledore acknowledged. I do care, deeply. Perhaps too deeply to maintain the objectivity my position requires. Harry studied the old wizard thoughtfully. I don't trust you completely, he admitted. Not yet. But I'm willing to work with you if it helps prepare for whatever's coming. Dumbledore nodded, accepting this conditional olive branch. That's more than I deserve, and all I can ask for. Thank you, Harry. As they rejoined Arthur and Remus, Harry felt oddly lighter despite the heavy revelations of the day. Knowledge, even difficult knowledge, provided clarity. The prophecy, Voldemort's likely return, Dumbledore's complex motivations, all pieces of a puzzle that was slowly taking shape. Whatever lay ahead, and it clearly involved challenges beyond ordinary wizarding education, Harry would face it neither alone nor unprepared. He had the Weasleys, Remus, soon Sirius, and now, in a more transparent capacity, Dumbledore himself. The boy who lived was becoming the boy who knew, and knowledge, as his mother had understood, was its own form of power. 6 months later, Harry stood in the center of the Burrow's garden, surrounded by friends and family. A complex runic circle had been drawn on the ground around him, with Arthur and Molly Weasley standing at the northern point, Sirius Black, looking healthier though still gaunt, at the eastern point, and Bill Weasley, representing the ritual magic component, at the southern point. Ready, Harry? Bill asked with an encouraging smile. Harry nodded, a mixture of nervousness and excitement bubbling inside him. Today marked the culmination of months of research, preparation, and negotiations, a modified adoption ritual that would officially make him part of the Weasley family while preserving both his Potter heritage and his mother's sacrificial protection. The ritual combines elements of traditional magical adoption with blood protection reinforcement, Bill explained for the benefit of those observing. Rather than replacing Harry's family connections, it adds new ones while strengthening existing protections. Molly and Arthur stepped forward first, each pricking their finger and allowing 7 drops of blood to fall into a silver chalice that Bill held. Sirius followed, adding his blood as Harry's godfather and magical proxy for James Potter. Finally, Harry stepped forward, adding his own blood to the mixture. Bill began chanting in Latin, the runes around them glowing progressively brighter with each phrase. The blood in the chalice shimmered and separated into 2 distinct portions, one glowing gold, the other silver. Harry James Potter, Bill intoned formally, do you freely accept the addition of the Weasley family into your magical lineage, creating bonds of blood and magic that supplement rather than replace your existing family connections? I do, Harry replied clearly. Arthur and Molly Weasley, do you freely accept Harry James Potter into your family lineage, offering him the full protection, rights, and responsibilities of a Weasley by blood and by magic? We do, they replied in unison. Sirius Black, as godfather and proxy for the Potter lineage, do you freely sanction this addition to Harry's magical family while preserving his connection to his birth parents? I do, Sirius affirmed, his voice rough with emotion. Bill raised the chalice. Then let the magic recognize what the heart has already accepted. He handed the chalice to Harry, who drank the golden portion, then passed it to Arthur and Molly, who shared the silver portion between them. As the last drop was consumed, the runic circle flared blindingly bright. Harry gasped as warm magic flooded through him, creating sensations of connection and belonging unlike anything he'd experienced before. He could feel Arthur and Molly's presence in his magical core, not replacing the faint echo of his birth parents that had always existed there, but joining it, strengthening it. As the light faded, Bill examined the magical readings from the ritual instruments. "Perfect," he announced with satisfaction. "The adoption has taken hold without disrupting the sacrificial protection. In fact, the protection appears stronger, anchored now to multiple points of familial connection." Molly rushed forward, embracing Harry with tears streaming down her face. "It's official now," she whispered. "You're ours in magic as well as heart." Arthur joined the hug, his own eyes suspiciously damp. "Welcome to the family, son. Officially and irrevocably." Over Molly's shoulder, Harry caught Sirius's eye. His godfather smiled approvingly, showing no jealousy or resentment at sharing Harry with the Weasleys. Their arrangement, joint guardianship with Harry residing primarily at the Burrow while spending regular time with Sirius at his newly renovated London home, had evolved naturally over the past months as Sirius recovered and integrated into Harry's support system. The Weasley children surrounded them next, with Fred and George declaring the need for a proper, "welcome to the Weasleys," prank initiation that made Molly scold them half-heartedly. Ron bumped Harry's shoulder affectionately, while Ginny presented him with a hand-knitted scarf in Gryffindor colors, "for when we all go to Hogwarts together." As the celebration moved inside for the feast Molly had prepared, Harry found himself momentarily alone with Remus and Sirius. "Your parents would be so proud," Remus said softly. "Not just of the ritual, but of everything, how you've handled the truth about the prophecy, how you've adapted to all the changes, how you've built connections." "James would be strutting like a peacock," Sirius agreed with a grin. Showing off photos of his son doing wandless magic at 9, forming family bonds with a complex ritual at 10. "And Lily?" Harry asked, always hungry for insights about his mother. "Lily would be telling James to stop bragging," Remus chuckled. "While secretly being just as proud. But she'd also be reminding you that magical talent means nothing without the heart to guide it properly. Which you have in abundance," Sirius added, ruffling Harry's eternally messy hair. "Now come on, I heard Molly made treacle tart, and I'm still making up for 8 years of prison food." As they joined the others inside, Harry reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past 20 months. From a cupboard under the stairs to a magical adoption ritual. From believing himself unwanted to having too many adults wanting to claim him. From ignorance about his past to preparation for a challenging future. All because a junior goblin auditor named Grip Hook had noticed financial discrepancies in Dumbledore's management of the Potter accounts. Later, as the celebration wound down and younger children were sent to bed, Harry overheard a conversation between Arthur, Sirius, and Remus that confirmed his growing understanding of the wizarding world situation. "Another disappearance reported near Little Hangleton," Arthur murmured. "Third this month." "And the dark mark sightings in Albania?" Sirius asked grimly. "Unconfirmed but concerning," Remus replied. "Dumbledore believes it's preliminary activity, followers sensing their master stirring somehow." "The Horcrux hunt?" Arthur inquired. "Progressing slowly," Sirius said. "That locket Regulus stole was definitely one. Destroyed now. But Dumbledore suspects at least 5 others." "And Harry's scar?" Arthur asked, his voice dropping even lower. A heavy silence fell before Remus answered. "Dumbledore's consulting specialists in soul magic. Nothing's certain yet." Harry slipped away, not wanting to eavesdrop further. He understood enough, the threat wasn't over. Voldemort wasn't truly gone. The prophecy still loomed in his future. But unlike 20 months ago, Harry now faced that future from a position of knowledge, with growing magical abilities and a support system that spanned multiple families. The boy who lived had become something more, a wizard in his own right, with connections, education, and purpose. As he climbed the stairs to the bedroom he shared with Ron, the bedroom in a home where he truly belonged, Harry recalled his mother's words from her letter, "You come from strength, ingenuity, and absolute love. Whatever trials you face, you have everything you need to overcome them already inside you. She had been right. And thanks to a goblin audit that had revealed Dumbledore's financial improprieties, Harry had discovered not just his heritage, but his potential, both as a wizard and as a person worthy of love. It was, he reflected as he drifted toward sleep, quite possibly the best audit in wizarding history. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.